Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto will do something that will get him in the bingo book part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A small, young boy approached the park, drawn by the vibrant voices. Among the trees, gardens, playground and open spaces, were a great deal many children in the throes of laughing and playing merrily. At first, he'd taken hesitant steps, but had eventually ended up wandering amongst them, gazing in open wonder at the joyful throng. He had only yet to choose a group to join, when a parent gasped at seeing him. It set a chain reaction of adults gathering their children until there were two opposing sides with an invisible border separating them. One side consisted of parents and their confused children. The other was Uzumaki Naruto. The parents had glared at him, willing him to cross the unseen barrier, so that any action they take, they can later justify it towards the defense of their offspring. And though all the children didn't know what was happening, it didn't stop them from interpreting the blonde boy as an unwelcome person that their parents had mutually agreed on. Most backed away and a few had sneered at him too. A few even dared to throw a rock in his direction, to encourage him to leave. Naruto glared back for only a moment, not understanding why this happened. Never understanding why this always happened. Actions like these had repeated themselves time and time again at different stages as he grew up, sometimes more than once on the same day. Because of these instances, a naive young Naruto had sworn to find the reason for why he had been treated so poorly. From eavesdropping at any opportunity, to forcing himself to expand his vocabulary so that he could understand all the kinds of books he could get his hands on, his wealth of obscure knowledge grew. By now, he developed his mind to be primitively, yet sharply analytical to every not-so-common details. But he still never found out as to why these events repeated. Naruto backed down from the baleful glares and retreated for any place that wasn't home just yet, openly grimacing at the thought. Spending time inside the house was just as unbearable when his own housekeeper detested his presence. She would not even give him her name or time of day, let alone any semblance of conversation. But she would leave soon, as did all the people prior to her. In fact, hours later on arrival of his home, Naruto found that she had already gone and the sparse amount of his worldly possessions had been vandalized. It did not surprise him. Some caretakers of his had also left under similar circumstances. This time, he resolved not to report this case. It just would not do for another to come and then repeat the cycle again. Foregoing the tending to the current disarray, Naruto had opted to wash up to start dinner immediately. So it was when he pursued cleansing himself in the bathroom, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. And his sad visage stared back. The faucet continued to pour, now totally ignored as Naruto had engrossed himself with his reflection. A silent plea crossed his eyes, a yearning to become someone else, a wish to change that face, an intent to kill that person staring at him. The person in the mirror's look changed from hurt to hatred. It was not uncommon for him to be on the receiving end of this look, and he had expected it from the mirror all the time. It had been long ago, weeks, perhaps even months, when he would deny all the damnings against him, voicing vehemently to himself that he was not any of it, and then questioning as to why it was like this. But all too soon did it change. He found himself believing them and repeating the names all the time, questioning his right to life. Monster. The person in the mirror had lowered their head a little. I don't deserve to live. The reflection bore bare teeth. Bastard. It had practically spat on him. Demon. There. In the eyes he saw something there. Demon! Mustering more emotion into this burst, the reflection had shown him a flicker of red irises for a brief moment. Not caring what to make of it, Naruto was swept with emotion. Summoning every inch of hatred and malice into the very image that stared back at him, he screamed at the face intensely, believing the very essence of the word. Demon! And then it just happened so quickly. A falling sensation, a corridor within corridors of ankle-deep water, a row of bars held together by a seal, a demon locked away, unmoving, unblinking red eyes of the Ninetales staring through him. Dead red eyes staring. His reflection's red eyes staring right back at him. Though back in the present, Naruto's young, limited mind was elsewhere, as everything he knew finally fell into place. Everyone hating him, his whiskered birthmarks, the red eyes he now donned. I am a demon. With this new understanding, his eyes turned back to their old blue tinge almost as if they too acknowledged this. In a week, Naruto would go to a library and research any and all details of the mythical kind, finally pinpointing just who he had briefly encountered. It would be weeks before he would structure the need to grow stronger. And it would be years before he would finally fathom a destiny only for him. But for now, he understood one need. Naruto tugged at his facial muscles into an amused expression. It was by closing his eyes and baring rows of teeth in an amused snarl, giving the impression of a wide, foxy grin. A need for retribution. It was a bright, new day. The sun's rays had glazed the rooftops and bathed it in a golden hue. Trees rustled as a few soft breezes weaved between the forests and buildings. Birds fluttered, animals skittered, and the village's many inhabitants started filling the streets. Today was the beginnings of a new promise in Konoha, the hidden village of the leaf. Though a blond boy, clad in a glaringly blue and orange ensemble, stood on the village monument. Poised and ready, his gaze stretched over the whole city presented before him. Withdrawing a notepad and a pencil, he quickly jotted down some numbers and then a quick sketch of the view before pocketing them in exchange for a paintbrush. This day, he'd make history. Do you know who these people are? Well, yeah, they're the Hokages. And you came all the way up here, just to deface them, dash. Well, they all look so serious. Idiot. Whap. Naruto hung his head low and rubbed at the sore spot at being hit. Turning away and grumbling, he afforded himself a smirk whilst his face was out of view from his teacher. Instinctively, he felt a pocket and was satisfied at feeling the bulge of the notepad from before. Iruka, completely unaware of his student's hidden agenda, had his heartstrings pulled by Naruto's crestfallen look. The act of vandalism had triggered memories of his own lonely and reckless youth. Acting on a whim, he had decided to treat Naruto to ramen to push down the encroaching depression, to which Naruto accepted wholeheartedly. The Chunin teacher looked on. Amusement was written on his face as he nodded every so often at his present company's one-way conversation. Once in a while, he would also consume another portion of his ordered ramen before it got any colder. His company, on the other hand, was multitasking to a heavy depth. Eating the third bowl of ramen and raving about ridiculous stories to his teacher aside, Naruto's mind was very much elsewhere. Currently, it was going over the taijutsu he was learning at school and chaotically comparing it to a handful of other styles he had witnessed, whether first-hand or by textbook, as each clutter thought he'd imagined, jumped to different and unfocused tangents. Now, how his body and mind could act so independently, could be attributed to years ago when he had just learned that secret of Konoha. The one that which no one should speak of, the reason of being the bane of everyone's existence, subjugated to humiliation and isolation, time and time again. He was the Nine Tails. The whiskers' birthmarks, those red-slitted eyes and a dead-sealed fox aside, Naruto still wasn't secure with the solidity of this development, and pursued much research and self-theological debate until he felt he had an explanation with the combination of all the facts he could find. When he had been the demon, he had underestimated the strength of the hidden village of Leaf, and thus the fourth Hokage had somehow mustered an enormous effort to seal him away. Possibly outright ridiculous, if the very history of the various ninja wars before the peace pacts weren't shinobi nations would fight for control, and it would be no surprise should any, if not all, villages strive to attain such incredible powers at their disposal. Oddly enough, all of the greatest of demons had disappeared one after another during the wars, so it shouldn't be surprising if there were people strong enough to seal them. In Naruto's own surmised words, no more demons around, and the Leaf managed to catch one. Who's to say these things aren't catchable? Adding the apparent legend of the fourth's unsurpassed strength, an oddly missing name, to this day, the idea of sealing away the body of the fox, but giving the soul human form, isn't so ridiculous in retrospect. Then from there, assuming the third won't dispose of him in his most vulnerable stage, he would rationalize this demon child's potential as a weapon of the village and would instill into him the need to defend the village. What a joke of an already lowly existence. Vowing revenge for such an outrage, Naruto began focusing on training his stamina so that someday, he would have an unrivaled chakra well to allow his vengeance fruition. After all, quite the amount of chakra is needed to decimate an entire village of ninjas. However, because of his unique background, Naruto had to undergo a dramatic change to not draw first. It began on drawing on annoyance, now that he had no reason to try being civil. He'd slowly come to associate class clowns to be a sort of social outcasts. With the combination of pranks and his already growing annoying attitude, he slowly and painfully engineered the facade of a cheerful, energetic, loud-mouthed idiot from pure observation of such influence alone. In time, this behavior had easily become routine, requiring little thought whatsoever on his part. In this state, his mind would be free to mull over things and analyze to such a degree that he could create lucky or unlucky instances on a clumsy whim. Thus leads this thought back to present-day Naruto, who was now theorizing of how to create a solid replication, though he was vocally expressing how he'd someday make an awesome technique that would beat the snot out of anyone in an instant, make 2-minute ramen in 1 minute, and fetch him his slippers. Iruka had finished eating just several minutes ago, though Naruto had somehow beaten him hands down, with 7 bowls as compared to his 1. With an 8th bowl disappearing rapidly, the panicking teacher intercepted his student from having another bowl, to which would add yet another dent into his own wallet. Okay, Naruto, that's enough. Iruka-sensei. Watching his teacher pay for the meals, Naruto couldn't help but wonder why Iruka felt obligated to do so. A while back, his stamina training had required more food where his meek allowance fell short. It wasn't long before his growing appetite turned his meals into rationing, and it showed during some classes at the academy. This was what first led Iruka to befriend him, to which Naruto quickly acted to milk the situation. He was surprised when the Chunin educator continually offered to treat him on such expensive outings. The axe had been a saving grace to allow steady progress of his stamina, so despite being unable to comprehend his teacher's obligation, but not wanting to push his luck, Naruto kept it up and let his teacher think whatever he wanted to think. Iruka, on the other hand, had been boggled about where all that food went. That thought was really a distraction from the severe sum he found himself paying for both meals and the meals prior. But really, who's counting? Not dwelling on their respective subjects, both teacher and student bid each other farewell and went their separate ways. Upon arriving at his humble abode, the Soul Uzumaki had decided to finish the task he started earlier that day. Removing what looked to be shoddy repairs on his couch, actually turned out to be a mangled-looking box containing folders and scrolls. He'd idly leaf through a few, Yamanaka, Aburame, Inuzuka, Naruto would tick off in his mind, before seemingly at random, procuring a folder and bringing it to the table, whilst withdrawing the notepad from the morning. Flicking through various entries, he finally came across the latest, a brief overhead sketch of the main Hyuga compound and the number of windows he had seen. Opening the folder held several pages of information pertaining to various notable names of Hyuga main house and branch house members, or in the cases of some, a facial summary where a name wasn't present, as well as a small scroll outlining several moves of their training style. The combination of all information present now allowed Naruto a hypothesis for an architectural blueprint of the compound which will prove undoubtedly invaluable much later down the path. See, the meager beginnings of the plannings had started as an unconscious reaction as to when Naruto began playing pranks and seeing people other than himself suffer. It was after failure of prank after prank did Naruto begin a mental composition of how to set up the pranks with the focus to escape without being caught. Soon, his thoughts were put to paper and the details required grew with each new and extravagant trap. Eventually, he'd felt he needed to expand his mapping to more important places, as he felt he might have to deal with said people eventually. Back to the present, though in the midst of copying the information, Naruto had paused, idly offering a silent prayer that this new research wouldn't prove useless like that time when he had finished compiling the whole Uchiha district, and then that one guy decided that it was a good day to kill everyone. Well, though it did make his revenge that little bit easier, it would take the fun out of shoving off a respected household. The following day had been struck with inspiration. Naruto had just been called to the front of the class to demonstrate Henji no Jutsu, a transformation technique he had first pawned off as ridiculous when he learned it last year. In his spare time, he had furthered the theory by creating an alternate technique to actually physically alter his appearance, instead of its mere illusion base. But on its completion, he berated himself for forgetting what would happen should anyone find out he was capable of a real transformation instead of creating an illusion of one. But if he should somehow degenerate it to a point where everyone would overlook it. Standing in front of the class, a certain blonde fox's eyes narrowed in mischief. Oh yes, just his luck that his new technique will make its debut today. Sexy no Jutsu. The genin test had come around later that day for the fox boy, and time had slowly rounded to his turn. In an effort to test his teacher's keen sense of observation, he focused on creating an odd bunshin. This clone looked just like a dummy in Naruto's clothing and had effectively fallen to the floor like one would without a proper way to keep it standing. He had been successfully failed. As Naruto stepped out, he slapped his forehead at just how dense his teachers could be. Clearly he has a good measure of control to create an illusion to even look like and act like that. A real failure would create a clone that would be semi-transparent, the features wouldn't be as accurately synonymous to a real dummy, and it wouldn't act like a real dummy would. For crying out loud! The dummy had a crusting, painted smile on its less than polished, wooden face. Oh well, he resigned and started in the direction of his backup plan. Naruto. Until he had been stopped by Mizuki, a teacher's aide to Iruka and the second judge of his test performance. The man then offered a proposition for an alternative way to become genin, to which Naruto unthinkingly accepted with great enthusiasm. After parting, Mizuki watched the boy turn a corner and was gone. Making his way down an alley to his own home, the traitorous ninja finally was able to laugh out loud at seeing how easy it was to trick the demon boy into doing his dirty work. He'd be long gone before the Umbu would get on his trail and the little bastard would get what he deserves. Just down a few streets, Naruto was barely holding down his bubbling excitement. He had been planning to sneak a peek at the team rosters, and a breeze might just mix up student names. When the lucky best of the best team of 2 were set, he would show up at Iruka's doorstep tonight and correctly perform Bunshin. But finally putting his fighting skills to the test and learning some forbidden techniques, he couldn't have planned it better. With a skip in his step, a certain teacher thought he had pulled the wool over the village's eyes, whilst a certain fox boy grinned at knowing he had actually pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. It was mutually decided that life would be good this night. Stopping at the meeting place for the trader, Naruto laughed at having his new technique prove priceless at attaining the scroll from the Hokage himself. He would have gloated on it further, but time being as short as it was, he retrieved a small bag hidden beneath the roots of a nearby tree. Removing a cheap camera from within, Naruto began taking photo after photo of the various writings of the scroll, briefly skimming the contents as he did so. The various Polaroids had twisted in mid-flight, landing ungracefully at his feet. Indeed, the scroll lived up to its name, the Scroll of Seals, though he had been initially disappointed. All the seals didn't have set instructions to perform them, but instead, were vague in the linear notes of the theories of how they are possible, even the ones that are in constant use now. Which probably meant that the scroll was intentionally indistinct should it be stolen. Groaning at the additional effort, Naruto continued at his task, letting the information sink ankle-deep in his head. Finally he came across a few of the more useful sort. A person summoning / calling / teleport technique would be useful, and that seal posing as a dojutsu, a night technique, was rather interesting. Boasting an ability to project fear into a person, paralyzing them, Naruto vowed to learn this aptly named killing intent technique soon. The ability to summon Shinigami, the god of death himself, was also enticing, though Naruto had been put off by having to exchange his life in this transaction. Then there was that one ninjutsu. He rolled his eyes at the absurdity of having a ninja technique in a scroll meant only for seals. Funny enough, the technique was considered forbidden, even at the Jounin level. The excited fox boy read the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu with growing amusement. Yes, it would do him a world of good to learn this shadow replication. He mused that the only person you can count on is yourself. There was even the possibility to master it this very night. Taking the reins back, he let his control return to the task at hand. Excitement rushing in his veins, Naruto moved on to the last seals and began reading the description, and his blood ran cold. For in his very hands lay the foundation of how he had come to be. The 4-season seal. He drank in the sight. It was now entirely probable that he could reattain his original body. Snapping out of his reverie, he took the last of the photos, put them into the bag, replacing it into its hiding spot, and immediately threw himself into learning the shadow clone. Had Naruto been more observant, he would probably have been more intrigued at the prospect of the last seal. The one with little to no information about the shape of a spiral. His breathing was haggard. His feet refused to budge. His hands clutched onto the scroll tightly. His body wasn't responding, but it was completely healthy. Naruto's mind was another matter altogether. For years now, Naruto's idiot facade easily had an autopilot switch. However, on quite a lot of occasions, his body would pull out some emotions, to which his mind would quickly suppress. Without a mentor to question as to what these things could mean, Naruto resorted to various forms of media to map them out. It wasn't long before he would find that these feelings were dangerous without dire self-control. Right of this moment, a feeling welled up inside of Naruto. It was a feeling he was unfamiliar with, but it didn't stop him from condemning it as one that wasn't welcomed. Just behind the tree Naruto leaned on, Iruka, all bloodied and strained for breath, had defended his student again from Mizuki. "He's not a monster," Iruka gasped. "He's just like me." The feeling had grown stronger now. The attempt to suppress it again had failed miserably, and the tears came. If Iruka hadn't shown up, Naruto would have beat Mizuki to an inch of his life and turned him in, citing a battle of luck on his side. But Iruka's appearance had changed things, having Naruto play his usual ignorant part. Despite the revelation, though second-hand to Naruto, it was the confirmation he needed. Iruka still came to Naruto's defense and had taken a hit meant for the boy. With a tearful expression, Iruka finally explained why he was drawn to the fox boy. They're in the same predicament. They're both alone. Both struggling without family to lead them. Both doing stupid things just so they could get attention. Any kind. Just as long as it pushed away at the hungering loneliness. It was at this point that Naruto felt an emotion he had successfully dodged until now. Unable to quell it, he panicked and ran. Mizuki gave chase, but Iruka again interfered. I know he's an excellent student. He's hard-working and always gives his best. But because he's so clumsy, no one respects him. He knows what's it like to hurt inside. Choking Iruka from the inside, it was his wish to improve his life all those years ago, and now, when he found the blonde boy in the same predicament he himself was in, it tore at him to give that boy the chance he deserved, a chance Iruka had wanted his whole life. Nothing short of complete belief in his own words, the Chunin lecturer was more than willing to sacrifice his life for that of his student. He's not a demon anymore, he's Uzumaki Naruto. Mizuki now understood that Iruka was an obstacle and concluded that his once comrade's life would now be forfeit. But Naruto would have none of that. If you lay a hand on Iruka-sensei, I'll kill you! Congratulations, Naruto. Iruka smiled warmly, to which Naruto tried to discern the foreign object tied to his forehead before it hit him. He had earned, not just a genin headband, but his teacher's headband. If he had been thinking clearly, he would recoil at the thought of wearing the symbol of his adversaries, but for some reason, the thought had instilled other feelings that made him quite giddy. He let the pleasant sensation fan out, and logical thoughts sat aside to bask in it. It was a feeling that made him smile. Iruka would always look back on this moment with great fondness. There was something about that smile that he couldn't explain. Unknown to him, it wasn't one of Naruto's fox grins, but the boy's first genuine smile he had given his whole life. Naruto. What are you doing here? This class is only for graduates. Shikamaru asked. Naruto pointed out his headband. I know. Shikamaru blinked, surprised at the turn of events. However, finding it troublesome to go any further, he took the path with less effort and casually let the topic drop, walking off to return to his seat. Naruto continued to grin, prideful on the reflections of the night before. But when it came to that emotion he couldn't name, he mentally shuddered at the thought of losing to it. The feeling had ran rampant, and it severely handicapped his judgment. A few minutes of mulling it over, and an incident involving another male student that only his idiot mode could have gotten into, Naruto had finally let the musing to rest. He had altogether disregarded the thoughts, determined to not let it happen again. After all, he just showed he learned a forbidden technique, not to mention how he used it so effectively in front of his teacher. No doubt it would raise suspicions, but should he continue to play his part, no one would still be none the wiser. Focusing back on the present, Naruto finally picked up on the inkling of doubt that pawed at the back of his mind. It continuously insisted that he had forgotten something, and it was really starting to irk him. It was at this moment Iruka entered carrying the necessary papers for the team rosters. Oh, that. Looking over his new teammates seating themselves on the rooftop of the academy, had Naruto really hate how unearthly power stuck him with the worst possible team? Yes, he acknowledged that they were the highest scoring in the class, but still. He had heavily disliked the fact that his team consisted of a head-in-the-clouds kunoichi without a blood limit, and an egotistical ass with a copying blood limit. He admitted that wouldn't have been a bad thing if they trained together, but come on. Any headway Naruto'd make would be undoubtedly stolen. If only he had either the Hyuga or Yamanaka girls, he could have picked up more on their arts, but no, he was stuck with the ordinary girl and the unoriginal boy. The unknowledgeable duo. Pathetic. Kakashi, however, had been a surprise. Though the teacher had failed all his teams before, Naruto knew of Kakashi's preceding reputation of being a master of 1,000 techniques. Rationally, 1,000 would be unlikely, but knowing techniques outside of the fire element would most definitely prove to be useful. But the likelihood of him teaching these techniques? Faye. With everyone seated, their teacher had been first to break the silence. Okay, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Go with name, likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams for the future, that sort of thing. You're our teacher, shouldn't you start? Sakura interjected. Kakashi regarded it coolly and accepted. Well, my name is Hataki Kakashi. My likes and dislikes are none of your business. I have a lot of hobbies. As for my dreams, well, and his mumbles just trailed off from there. So all we learned was his name? Sakura whispered incredulously. Naruto and Sasuke couldn't help but agree. Let's start with you then, pink-haired girl. Sakura blanched but recovered quickly. My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes and dreams are. Her eyes trailed to the dark-haired boy beside her, and she giggled. Kakashi rolled his visible eye. I dislike Naruto, she said grimly, whilst Naruto acted accordingly. And for my goal, I'll be a great kunoichi someday. With the love of my life, though she omitted the last part from being said out loud. Okay, his team was looking pretty bad at this point, but Kakashi gave them the benefit of the doubt. And to the brooding guy. He pointed at Sasuke. Sasuke bristled but started. I am Uchiha Sasuke. I have few likes and dislikes and fewer hobbies. As for dreams, he tilted his head down. It's not really a dream, but an ambition. His eyes glazed. To kill a certain man. Silence sat heavily, each person to their own thoughts. Kakashi reasoned that this team needed a major fixer-upper but still had a slim chance of passing. And you, the blonde kid. Their new teacher finally deigned to move things on. Naruto jumped excited. Hey, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like lots of things, especially ramen. My favorite is miso ramen, but I also like prawn and pork and beef. He counted off on his fingers. Everyone rolled their eyes. And I absolutely hate how long it takes for the ramen to cook. Kakashi silently swore never to pass this team. They would need nothing short of a minor deity to get underway. And my dream. Naruto paused, eyeing a specific structure in his line of sight. With a well-placed sudden jump, the genin landed lightly on the railing facing the Hokage monument. My dream, he repeated, a little wistful. When he was younger and had just learned of his background concerning the demon fox, Naruto had set out to try to find out as much information as he could concerning his non-mortal heritage. What had surprised him was the information concerning both gods and demons. It did not have to be said that gods were righteous and would bestow upon those who believed in them, but the information that had interested him were about the gods who wreaked havoc. How different were they to demons? Apparently very. Putting it into contrast with himself, he had wondered if perhaps now that he did not have a demon's body nor the illusions that came with it, he'd be able to gain something denied to his demonic half. You don't have to be so dramatic about it, idiot. Sakura's shouting had stirred Naruto out of his thoughts. We already know you want to be Hokage. Naruto briefly cast a look her way and turned his attention to the monument. Yeah, Hokage, he murmured. He had briefly imagined the village burning to the ground and the Hokage monument silently watching with their chiseled solemn faces, unable to right the unfathomable chaos. Godhood would let you get away with a lot of things, and Hokage would probably be as close as a mortal ninja can get. It would just be a matter of time and research until it was feasible. But they didn't need to know those details. Today's air had a crisp smell, for it was a new day, full of new surprises, new starts and new horizons. Truly it was all blue skies and sunshine on this very day. You'll have to come at me with killing intent to win. And with that one statement, the genin of Team 7's bubble was burst, and a cloud was to start raining on their parade. How are mere genin supposed to defeat a jounin? The genin in orange, however, regarded this statement with growing interest. He knew Mizuki had been a Chunin caught by surprise and considered how he would fare against a jounin. Deciding on wanting to begin now, on the premise that if his teacher isn't able to defend himself, then the man didn't deserve his title, he whipped out a kunai and rushed head on. Nothing will stop me from becoming Hokage, was Naruto's idiotic obligatory war cry. Only to take one step and have his own arm-wielding kunai pointed into the back of his own head. Ma, I haven't even said to begin yet, Kakashi's voice complained from behind the astounded fox boy. Begrudgingly, the genin eased his muscles. When his teacher was satisfied, he had let go of Naruto's arm, and then indicated to begin the test. Smoke immediately flooded the vicinity, and Kakashi was satisfied at how his team had dispatched to hide. Hey! Except. I don't think you're quite getting this, the masked jounin remarked. He waved his hand in a circulating motion, futilely trying to gesture his student about remembering ninja ethics, namely hide. Only Naruto had no reason to hide. He wanted a fight and was raring to get it. What happened before didn't count, as he had telegraphed his moves. When actually engaging his teacher in combat, he'd been thoroughly surprised. The cycloptic teacher had been quite fast-paced at reacting, especially when all the attacks were directed at his blind spot. Naruto had penned it down as battle experience, something he himself was sorely lacking. From here, Naruto had left himself open to take one of Kakashi's attacks. Namely, an ass spoke that sent the poor fox boy into the river. Fury brushed his thoughts at being humiliated like that, and Naruto had employed his Kage Bunshin on the Jounin, knowing full well that his knowing of this particular technique would become common knowledge. The stunned reaction had stroked the blonde's pride. However, when Kakashi had used Kawarimi to swap positions with a shadow clone, Naruto's interest waned and he purposely messed around until the test ended. Watching the proceedings had been a curious item. Whilst he had pulled out of the game and consequently ended being strung up, Naruto couldn't help but feel something had slipped him by. His research into genin teams years ago had him learn about this test to find out whether a genin team was ready for Jounin tutelage. He was unable to get the information out of his prior classmates, and it was only now that he experienced it that he learned about it. But something didn't add up. He knew genins were put into teams of 3, yet Kakashi had said that someone would still fail. But he knew of people who went into the test, and the ones who graduated stayed in the same teams and not mixed into the theoretical amount of people who got a bell. Meaning, it hadn't been a test of skill. Naruto had furrowed his eyebrows, finding there was more to this test than what he had expected. In retrospect, he should have known, but was quick to shrug it off, as now that he fails, he would be able to ensure a better team and then prepare to pass for that test. Leave it to Sasuke to shove a snack in Naruto's mouth to have the team barely pass Kakashi's test. And so, Team 7 begins the D-rank missions. Gardening is burrowing, whined Naruto. The team had winced. They had all unanimously agreed with their loud team member, but none did so vocally. Shut up, idiot, said Sasuke. Once again the team had winced and there was another unspoken agreement about their dead last teammate. Naruto muttered some obscene language under his breath and continued to pull out more weeds. Though seemingly unwittingly, he did note to pull out some herbs out of spite for the fox-hating owner. I really don't like dogs, Naruto growled. Fool. Serves you right for picking the biggest dog. Sasuke rolled his eyes. The dog Naruto had chosen to walk had turned the tables on him, and instead the dog had taken Naruto for a walk through a Chunin training ground. Though the dog emerged fine, Naruto looked like he had been one of the Academy's test dummies for a long duration. Bringing the dogs back was a quiet affair, and though Naruto had a frown on his face, it was only for show, as he reveled in learning that his Academy Genjutsu had worked into coercing the dog into taking him through the training field, as he was unable to test it on anything else if he were to keep with his role. Though happy with the mind trick, he felt a little disappointed with his endurance, as it fell a little below his expectations when he had purposely set off a number of traps in the test area. The dog served his purpose without bringing suspicion to his plans, and so he decided against giving it fleas like he had originally intended. Whoosh. Thunk. And that's why you're dead last, Sasuke remarked about Naruto's last attempt at target practice. Shut up, jerk, Naruto spat. The arrogant boy only smirked in response. Kakashi looked up long enough from his perverted novel to announce that training was over and promptly disappeared in a flurry of leaves. Sasuke had no reserve to leave with a word on his part, so he began his trek back home. Sakura saw her chance to ask him for an outing, to which he shut her out. Awaiting Naruto's advances to replace her idol and just itching to brush him off, Sakura waited stiffly. When no such suggestions from her teammate came forward, she looked over to see that he was too busy beating on a dummy to even notice training was already proclaimed over. Thanking a minor deity for small conveniences, she had walked off to her own devices. It's quite well known that Hatake Kakashi's a genius. Sharingan aside, he had done exceedingly well without it for the half of his life he had yet to receive it. Many people had attributed all his achievements as to perhaps the way he thought, or maybe he was striving hard for his father's sake, and that was the drive to make him grow up quickly. True, all above contributed to Kakashi's successful career, but when it came down to it, there was one thing that the Hatake prodigy kept at his beck and call. Gut instinct. It goes without saying that he could easily recall all kinds of rules and procedures, but he would truly shine when there was nothing holding him back. It was rather unfortunate that only during that one mission with Obito he had favored regulations over his instinct. And it had cost him the death of his dearest friend. Well, perhaps they weren't exactly close friends before the mission, but it said the strains of friendship can be measured how far one would be willing to go for the other. Clearly, in the time they knew each other, Obito went that one step further than Kakashi would have ever reciprocated. Nor now will the Jounin ever get the chance to repay the debt. And so it is, ironically enough, it was his friend's eyes that allowed him a new look to the way he saw things. The Sharingan notwithstanding, he saw a new appreciation for things. And with this new insight, he held close to his gut to make sure nothing would threaten these things as long as he had something to say about it. And that's the reason why he was watching one of his students from afar. Granted, he'd observe his students from time to time outside team-related matters as to subtly get to know how they think and to take advantage of the knowledge to prepare them better. Actually, the reason he would be late to meetings was simply to build teamwork between the members even if it was against himself. Though this was his rationalization for either taking his sweet time at the epitaph or giving him time to read his sweet novels. But his gut had been rather adamant about the blonde-haired boy still training at the field. It's been over a week, and he'd spend more time observing the boy than any of the others simply because something had felt amiss. Drawing blanks, Kakashi decided it was time to take a break from his lookout and return with a full stomach. After all, though a vessel, the boy was still a genin. With the distance between himself and the clearing ever widening, Kakashi couldn't help but think that it was that kind of irresponsible thinking that got Obito killed. A few minutes later, Kakashi had been roof-hopping when he found himself joining the company of the other Jounin teachers at the usual eatery that was quite popular among the more experienced shinobi. Inevitably, the subject of their teams had arisen. "My team's gotten off to a good start," Kurenai said before pausing to take a small bite out of the simple cake she had ordered. Inazuka Kiba is kind of a hothead, Aburaim Shino is very single-mindedly focused, and Hinata of the Hyuga is self-destructively polite. She again paused to take another prim bite, taking brief glances at her audience's eyes. Their problems are rather easy to solve, although they already get along pretty well. Only she winced at what was coming ahead. They all have blood limits, and I'm quite stumped as to how I should be teaching them. All the instructors within earshot nodded. They all knew exactly where she was coming from, as they'd all been there or at least reminisced about the old days being in genin teams and considered how hard their own teachers worked for them. It was unanimously agreed that with tutoring those that had vastly alternate skills than your own, you just have to wing it, give it your best shot and hope it's enough. Families usually train their children in their arts anyway. Sarutobi Asuma bit off a piece of meat on his skewer, and then pointed at the female jounin. "Well, you sound pretty unlucky. I've got the Shikinocho team. Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino and Akimichi Chuji. They all don't have a drive in training. In fact, I play shogi against Nara all the time." For some reason, possibly known only to him, Asuma puffed his chest out, preening at the disbelieving attention. "That's really not something to be proud of." Kurenai rolled her eyes and was quick to add under her breath, "I wonder if you even gave a test, or how they managed to pass it." The bearded instructor shrugged it off and turned to address the final person that made their company. "How's your team, Kakashi?" Kakashi was about to speak when his coffee and sandwich finally arrived. He thanked the waitress kindly with his standard happy, close-eyed nod and added the necessary additions to his beverage, ignoring the sandwich for the moment. Kurenai paid extra attention to him, considering that she'd never seen this jounin without the mask, and of course the cup-to-mouth movement required a drinking motion, that a barrier should not get in between, for it be successful. Actually, you could say she was trying to look underneath the underneath. "Oh, just an odd group. Haruno Sakura, Sasuke of that clan and the Naruto." The air had been pregnant with silence between the three. "Damn." Asuma found his voice and spoke what first came to mind. This response was the most obvious choice for this moment. "Yep," Kakashi replied, now picking the mug up. "Two missing nins and a vessel." Kurenai added in her 2 cents. She was glad that she was up to date with this kind of knowledge, as being recently promoted to jounin had you privy to a lot of new gossip restricted from below the rank. However, she cursed at her lapse in concentration at the sight that now coursed her masked companion's face. "Indeed." Kakashi nonchalantly took a sip from a straw that went underneath the mask. "Did you know Itachi?" Asuma asked, completely missing whatever subtle event that took place. "Not personally." Kakashi shrugged. "I knew Sakura's aunt." The only female in the conversation interrupted. Both gave her their attention. "From what I can remember, she was the first Haruno since the establishment of the Leaf to become a ninja." She gave pause to a stray memory. "She was such a nice person. I don't think she ever became a missing nin in all honesty. I think she was one of the ninjas lost during that attack, since I wouldn't know for the life of me why she'd ever leave the village." The lapse in concentration had cost her again. "They say that her relationship had her go into hiding," Kakashi mumbled whilst chewing. His coffee now empty and straw sitting idly by, Kakashi waved his sandwich that procured a bite mark somehow, though his mask had not looked to have shifted in the least. "Relationship?" This was the first Kurenai had heard it. Thinking back on some old memories, she could swear she saw the now proclaimed missing Nin with someone else once or twice. I think I remember someone, but I'm not quite sure this time. She made sure not to blink to miss the masked Jounin's antics this time. Kakashi dubiously averted his gaze, considering his next choice of words. Both Kurenai and Asuma leaned in. Although the male of the listeners had already heard the rumors, he knew if it was coming from Kakashi then it was likely that they were true. Kakashi moved his sandwich to his face but then was surprised to find his mask blocking the exchange, as if he had forgotten he was wearing a mask at the time. Looking up to see both teachers staring expectantly and a little surprised themselves, he, assumed Lei, grinned awkwardly. Sorry about that, I forgot I keep it on. Kakashi proceeded to wrap his sandwich up with a napkin and added it to one of his vest pockets. Kurenai twitched an eye, completely unbelieving of the events, but she put it aside as to hear about what had happened to her old acquaintance. You see, she was seeing. But before Kakashi could continue, his eye had caught someone at the edge of his vision and stopped. Speak of the devil, he murmured before he casually waved back. His present company turned to see who he was addressing. Kakashi seemed a little dazed, but he gladly gave a little wave right back at Haruno Sakura. The generic thought of who knew that teachers had private lives outside teaching crossed the little pink-haired ninja's mind, as does all students who meet their teachers outside any type of educational premise. Then she turned to continue along the district when... Forehead girl. A voice came from behind. Sakura's back stiffened. Ino pig. She replied just as curtly. The blonde girl's, presumably Ino's, eyes narrowed and she eyed her adversary warily. Well, I hope you're not up to gorge on something. Your waist looks bigger from the last time I've seen you, said Ino haughtily. Sakura recoiled but was quick to repay the debt. Were you talking to me or perhaps to your reflection in the window? Lightning flickered between the two as either was determined to back down from the challenge. Growl. That is, until both their stomachs simultaneously voiced their independent opinions. Well, I'm sure that place nearby D doesn't pack pounds. Ino had managed, her face a nice shade of red at the unexpected outburst. Why yes. I agree. I'm sure their dumplings are practically fat-free. Sakura stuttered, her actions mirrored her blonde counterpart. And so, they both made their wounded pride way to do something about their complaining organs. Now it's generally known that the Yamanaka and Haruno girls have been rivals for a number of years now. It's a little less known that both girls started off as friends prior to their rivalry and that a certain Sasuke is the cause of it, as is the cause of many several other strained relationships. Now, what's not known is that despite their differences in showboat distaste for the other, is that their rivalry only extends to either the previously mentioned Uchiha survivor or ninja training. So despite all appearances, they are, in all terms of the word, sort of friends. Thus, now they had seated themselves at the same table and proceeded to order. Of course, leave it to rivalry to also affect how they order as not to show weakness to the other. I'll have 2 pork buns and a glass of water, please. Ino went first. She briefly glanced at Sakura, making sure that her pink-haired rival was watching her before hastily adding, the second bun for takeaway. For my brother. And I'll have some steamed dumplings. Sakura chose, then decided on adding a drink. And a glass of cola. She saw her friend raise an eyebrow at this. Diet cola, that is. After jotting down the notes, the waitress left and some of the tension drifted, allowing for small talk between the competing ladies. By the time the food arrived, they both were now speaking on common subjects like that of boring D-rank missions, lazy teammates, and even lazier teachers, training, and Sasuke did this the other day. He did. Oh, I wish I was there to see that. Haha, it was something alright. Doesn't mean anything though. This separate teams thing is a setback, but it doesn't mean Sasuke and I aren't destined for each other. In your dreams. Sasuke's mine already, you just haven't caught on yet. Fat chance. Sasuke would only look at you if you're a real ninja. Well, good thing my uncle got me the new top-of-the-line Kuna. Something wrong? My kunai. I must have left them at the training site. Sakura abruptly stood up. I'm really sorry, but I got to get them. Naruto was last there, and if that weirdo found them, he would probably add them to some sort of stalker shrine of me. Ino chuckled, though the irony of themselves having shrines to their beloved flew right over their heads. Sakura then pulled out a couple of bills to cover her meal and started for the exit. Well, you best hurry then. I'll see you later. Take care! When Sakura finally arrived at the training area, she was surprised to see her blonde teammate was still there, still in a one-man war against his perpetual motionless foe. Suffice to say, though both combatants were quite haggard, Naruto's more sluggish movements had made it look like the dummy edged the boy out in endurance. She took a moment to pause in her search for her weapons to eye her teammate warily. Though it was admittedly cute that he had a crush on her, it was offset by the fact that he'd be annoying in any possible way, and it's practically typical for him to just somehow spoil any type of alone time she found with her Sasuke. Still, she had nothing against him personally, and she, silently, respects his, loudly self-proclaimed, determination. Hey Naruto! He paused and turned to look at her. His eyebrows lifted and a grin replaced the serious barred teeth. Hey Sakura-chan! He waved at her exaggeratingly. It was then that Sakura had noticed the condition of his hands. They were heavily bruised and lightly bloody. The scabs weren't given a chance to form as he had abused it over and over. Gasping at the sight, she hurriedly reached into her pack for a roll of bandages. Sakura's mother had been very adamant about treating injuries and illnesses, so it shouldn't be surprising that her daughter had taken after her in that respect. Quick Naruto, hold out your hands. He did so without question and Sakura went about adding ointments before wrapping them up. You shouldn't overdo it, Naruto. No way. I'll keep practicing and show that jerk just yet. Sakura stopped herself from correcting him about her handsome teammate. Yes, but pushing your body past what it can handle is terrible. You might not heal right. Infections or even your chakra points in your hands will misalign or something. It showed on his face that the explanation flew over his head, but she saw him nod, grateful all the same. Thanks, Sakura-chan. She smiled at his soft-spoken expression. There were never times that he'd be quiet like this. Oh sure, he'd be quiet when he'd plot or when he'd sulk, but never when he'd just be content. Without having much else to add to the small talk, she looked to the clouds. Well, I think it'll rain tonight. You might want to head in. I can take my break later. I've got to keep practicing to become Hokage someday. He returned to pummeling the hapless dummy and Sakura saw it as a signal to take her leave. It was only when she reached the edge of the clearing did she stop to watch him for a few more moments. You could learn a little from him, Sakura. Startled out of her thoughts, she turned to the newcomer. Kakashi-sensei? The Jounin nodded in Naruto's direction. On some days like this, he practices till he falls unconscious and stays overnight. You can't be serious. Her eyes widened in disbelief. I am very serious. However, somehow he just doesn't improve as quickly as other people do. His stamina, on the other hand, is impressive. I dare say he would be quite the juggernaut should he master it. Sakura had nodded and turned when she heard him shout out his prize technique, Kage Bunshin. She watched a little longer as just over a handful of clones unorganizedly attacked the dummy, some getting in the way of others, and one had attached itself to the head of the dummy and bit down hard from on its perch. She giggled at his antics and looked to gauge Kakashi's action. He wasn't there. Seeing that he had left, she resumed back on her way. Upon her leaving, a Naruto, the one biting on the dummy's head, exploded, causing a chain reaction of explosions from the remaining clones. Having confirmation from his replications that she wasn't watching, he launched back into his normal attack. The bandages turned red very quickly. Unknowns to Sakura, the Hitachi genius had stuck around, but settled from a different post to watch the Uzumaki boy from a distance again. The boy had him truly perplexed. The lunch break had allowed him some space for thought, and he had come up with two theories. On one hand, Naruto was an idiot. Loud, crude, linear thinking and downright clumsy. He had glaringly obvious attack patterns and would more often than not inflict more damage to himself than his opponent, but could still outlast them. The boy lacked direction but was determined to get to places. A dangerous combination. On the other hand, Kakashi narrowed his eye. The boy was a genius. A very motivated, completely subtle and far more cunning than anyone on some level. None of this could be proven though. The Jounin could only guess some possibilities considering he had based it solely on the genin knowing a forbidden Jounin level technique in conjunction with his gut instinct. Just no solid evidence whatsoever. Eventually, the Jounin shrugged it off. His book called to him, and after watching Naruto do hours upon hours of punching the dummy, did he give the boy the benefit of the doubt, and concluded that Naruto just might be a field genius, evolving far more quickly in situations than he ever could with text. And Uzumaki were always known for that sort of thing. When the Jounin left, a few rocks surrounding the area exploded in a burst of smoke and Naruto finally made his move, leaving the training field. It had taken him the better part of just a little under an hour of tree hopping before he found his destination, a clearing that hosted an old and extensively large tree with a sort of creeper sapling coiling itself around its host. Naruto created a clone to turn into a bucket and used it to draw water from a nearby stream. All done with a ginger grin, focused on the results of the secret he had planted there 2 weeks ago. Some few days after the Mizuki incident, he'd read across some simple instructions about a certain set of seals. Particularly how to add an element to a weapon. The scroll had been vaguely specific, but he had reasoned that the method was common, high-class, ninja knowledge, and it was only the method of how to make specific, and powerful, result was what each hidden village adheres to keep secret. So, though the art should technically take years to make, Naruto had planned shortcuts he had access to. For example, a most effective weapon would require the element to be infused long before the blade is made and then infused time and time again for each time it is molded, until it is its final product. In this sense, a blade with a burning edge could be made by adding liberous amount of fire and sealing flames into the unmolded metal, then careful manufacturing of the metal into a sword, whilst adding more heat and fire techniques throughout the molding process. Tada! A sword with a fiery edge. In Naruto's case, he alternated the method a little. He reasoned that if a weapon can be sealed with an element, then why can't an element be sealed with a weapon? His reasoning was to swap the key ingredients around, much alike having the fire and molding a weapon out of that. Thus a fire with a wieldable sword-like edge. It was sort of the same effect in the end. With all this in mind, Naruto purchased a second-hand kunai that had seen many a battle, as it would be more subjected to chakra coursing it, and wrapped some silk around the handle that had been soaked in water meshed with chakra. From there, he'd located a sapling creeper plant that grew quickly and an age-old tree to host it. Then he buried the kunai at the roots of the creeper so that it would theoretically absorb the chakra from the kunai and slowly become attached to it, possibly merging with it. That was a little over 2 weeks ago, and since then, Naruto had returned here to pour it water and chakra every day. And just like every day, the plant danced ever so faintly to the whims of a breeze that wasn't there, whilst tightening its grip around the tree. A little excited at the development, Naruto was still a little disappointed with the speed of the progress. At this rate, the weapon would only be halfway decent by the end of the year. Having to pay so many visits would undoubtedly bring up unwanted attention, so it would be in his best interest to try to finish this project within a handful of months. No need to risk his life over something that wasn't working. So Naruto decided to play his shortcut card. His eyes turned slitted as he called on the red chakra. Years ago, he'd already learned to tap into the seal to pull red chakra out for his benefit. It was always signaled with the tinting of the eyes and would also give him minor boosts in taijutsu as well as a little faster healing rate. He'd never dared to test how much he could pull out, as the village might be a tad sensitive towards sensing demonic chakra as was the case now. He pulled away Sakura's bandages and swiftly drew a kunai over his unprotected wrist. When the cut bled freely, he held it over the creeper. The instantaneous effect had been amazing but almost beautifully dangerous to behold. If the earlier movement had been likened to that of a whimper, then the results now were akin to that of a scream. The blooming green foliage had tinted to an ominous red, leaves shed and buds grew and the tendrils wrapped itself further around the tree, squeezing like that of a deathly forbidden embrace. Naruto couldn't help but be very impressed. His corner cutting had done better than he had predicted, and so he repeated shedding blood again and again, encouraging the sapling to grow and grow. It was only when the effects slowed down did he take it as a symbol to stop. He stood back and admired his work. Before today, it would appear the creeper was merely a growth, hugging at the age-old tree as something perhaps looking up to it, a guardian for the little plantling. But now it appears differently. Now it appears more to be a parasite, the red leech wrapping its vines in a deceitful and painful hold. In the coming months, it will eventually overwhelm the tree, choking the life out of it until there was nothing left to take, and then it would start choking the others out of its reach. Then it should be ready for harvesting. Naruto gave a nod and made a quick mental note to change his cultivating schedule accordingly, and left satisfied for the day, heading back to his original training area to pick up where he left off. By the time he arrived, it was fast approaching nightfall and the genin dug into his stamina training with vigor. The first few minutes were fine, but he was starting to notice the signs of faint. Looking to his bandaged hands from earlier and then his wrist, it had sunk in that he had lost more blood than he really should have gave. Without time to get home, Naruto retrieved his canteen and downed as much water as he could before unconsciousness takes him. It was mere seconds later he keeled over trying, and failing, to keep himself upright using the dummy as support. But he was content with all of his accomplishments coming along nicely, and that everything would be right with his world soon enough. Though, he could stand to keep more blood next time. When looking to describe Sakura, One is quick to remember that she is kind and cordial to her family, friends, and generally anyone she comes across. The exception being her temper, raised against those that really grate her nerves. This kind attitude of helping others and roughhouse competition has helped her excel to vast heights. This is in reference to her most obvious attribute, her intelligence and analytical thinking. Because of this, she had graduated second to the top of her class, second only to Sasuke, and around third in her graduating year. Though it's a feat for the amount of information she digests daily, it is because of a certain trait that had aided her kindness and competitive style is the real reason of why she's so knowledgeable. The reason behind this reasoning is her simple curiosity. It's the reason why she knows of the brink of war all the hidden villages are planning for. It's the reason why she knows of Kakashi's preceding reputation. It's the reason why she knows of Sasuke being the last survivor of the Uchiha clan. But she still doesn't know the reason of Naruto's never say die attitude. So when the sun had long since set and Sakura was starting to prepare for bed and she happened to look outside, catching the moon just before it hid behind some thick, foreboding clouds, she briefly thought of rain, and it reminded her of her meeting with Naruto earlier, followed by Kakashi's claim to her teammates' training regime. And her curiosity got the better of her. The pink-haired ninja then donned some of her usual ninja garb and, out of habit, retrieved her pouches. She was still attempting to pack more bandages and kunai and reaching the front door when an obstacle had appeared before her exit. Namely, her mother. "Where are you going at this time?" the Haruno matriarch asked. Knowing that it would be a bad idea for her to be out at this time for any boy, the younger Haruno female paused, considering what would make a more appropriate answer. Luckily, her mother answered for her when noticing the various implements she was in the middle of storing. "Training tonight? I guess I shouldn't wait up for you, daughter," she assumed. "Don't forget the bandages and ointments." Not wanting to push her luck, Sakura hastily agreed and left. Doubt had wedged itself firmly into her mind that Naruto would still be there at this time, but she trudged on, firm on the decision just to see. Her curiosity spurned her forwards, and if he, likely, wasn't there, she just sneaked back into her home. "Yep, just get over there, whoops, stupid me, he's not here," and head BA. Sure enough, he was still there and unconscious at the dummy's base. "Oh Naruto, after all that, you still lost to a dummy," she quietly admonished. She changed his bandages and was surprised at how fast he had healed, but she penned it down to Hinata passing by and giving him some of homemade cream. A smile played on her lips as the thought of how the shy Hyuga girl would go about giving it to him, stuttering and turning red as a tomato. Once done, she then thought to just leave him there overnight, knowing full well that it was pretty normal for him to do that. The loud rumble overhead pulled on her conscience, and she tried to wake him. Seeing how it wasn't working, she grabbed him by his arms and maneuvered under him, as to give him a piggyback for her long trek to his home. On more than one occasion along the way, did Sakura wish she had new Kage Bunshin too. The reverberation of movement and the sound of footsteps had caused Sakura to return to the waking world. Blinking away the sleep, she was at first confused with her surroundings up until she remembered that after the tiring effort of bringing Naruto home, the rain had started. Without an immediate umbrella in view, Sakura sat to relieve her aching muscles and went to close her eyes for a second. Needless to say, she accidentally closed her eyes until morning. Sitting up, her eyes scanned the room, noting how a handful of Naruto clones had set out doing a number of tasks. One was making breakfast, another was assisting the former with relative jobs like setting a plate and utensils, another was going through some paperwork, and the last was starting on cleaning. The cleaning one had approached the couch to straighten some cushions when it froze, staring at Sakura wide-eyed. Another had sighted the unexpected guest and it, too, froze. Eventually the rest had caught sight of her and stuck rooted to their posts. The real Naruto had finished with using the bathroom and stepped out to the living room entrance. He already wore his standard orange and blue garb and was in a completely clean, albeit linearly focused state. All the clones realized his entrance and went back to their designated jobs. Naruto hadn't made any effort to greet Sakura, or perhaps he just didn't notice her, as he continued to the open space between the kitchen and lounge area. Upon getting to the middle, he had moved into a practice stance. The movement had Sakura move a hand to cover her mouth. She recognized it as the stance of the Jukin, the gentle fist. Mesmerized at the sight, she watched on silently as Naruto correctly went through a few motions of attacks with his eyes closed and brows furrowed in concentration. She felt the telltale signs of chakra being used in some of his motions and wondered if he really did pick up on the fighting form reserved only to the Hyugas. "You know the Jukin?" she couldn't help but exclaim while he was halfway through practice. Sakura, dash. Inwardly, Naruto's mind had gone a mile a second, cursing up a storm. Quickly trying to take hold of the situation, so he strived to backtrack for how and why Sakura was here, His mind was quick to regret giving his clones separate commands instead of the standard mental connection, but who could blame him? He didn't want to know how he had to control how something should be cooked, or even which way this should be scrubbed when he could set them to automatically do things he would have done he'd done. Thus, when he created these clones with specific tasks in mind, he never expected anything like this should happen. Then he himself had overlooked her when starting his ritual morning practice, and his mind was more focused on the results of the day before. He never expected her to be here, nor did he ever pay her any attention aside from what his stupid side required of him. So when his thoughts resulted in a blank, his final effort to get his rising panic under control, Naruto turned to the closest clone who, in an effort to help, held up the frying pan, showing clearly more than the regular amount of food it had cooked. "Hey, want some breakfast or something?" Much to her chagrin, Sakura's stomach had agreed loudly. A thought about that happening too many times lately flitted briefly. Letting her question slide in favor of immediate satisfaction, she settled at the table with the real Naruto. The chef clone began serving and she boggled at the food at the table. Scrambled eggs, bacon, miso soup, rice, and toast with its complement of half a dozen condiments. "This is a lot of food." The chef clone had taken the time to throw a grin her way. It was easily assumed that the clones out of view were throwing her the same smug expression too. "Well, breakfast is the important meal of the day," Naruto stated, helping himself to a serve of eggs, bacon, and rice. Sakura took the cue to start with something familiar to her own mornings: toast. Though she did help herself to the more exotic jams her own home did not stock. The pause to eat allowed Naruto more thought on this situation. Sakura now knew too much, and he would be compromised. Unless he somehow finds a way to open his seal soon, his mortal body would not last in the midst of a village of ninjas. Racking his mind for a solution, he found that there was still a way to stop word from getting out, and that involved his hands getting dirty. Instinctively, his doppelganger handed him a glass of milk, to which Naruto gratefully downed to try to drown out that distasteful thought. Sakura had finished 2 pieces of toast before looking over to see Naruto gulp down a glass of milk in one sitting. Their serving clone had noticed her eyeing the glass and went to offer her a beverage. She accepted, and despite her wishfulness on staying true to her diet, her own family never had extravagant breakfasts, she settled for a little indulging and took a bowl of miso as well. Sipping delicately, her thoughts had reviewed that up until now, she went with the flow, trying to figure out where this Naruto fit. Seeing Naruto imitating a prestigious fighting form, making clones first thing in the morning, and one was now serving them breakfast, was just insane. If Naruto was really capable of all of this, just how much was he hiding? Finding her resolve, she went on to ask her previous question. "So, how do you know the gentle fist?" she asked right after she finished the last sip of her soup. "I don't know the gentle fist. You must be imagining things," he replied grimly, wishing she'd drop it and forget everything. "I know that's the art. I've practiced with Hinata a few times." With her accusation hanging stale, her eyes directly on the boy in front of her, Sakura didn't see the other clones tense. However, the hair on her neck began to prickle. Naruto demurely placed his chopsticks down, and his eyes lifted, looking deep into hers. "Okay, I only know the bits of the style, and what it's supposed to do, easily enough. The Byakugan lets someone attack the inner coils and with little chakra to waste. Without it, attempting the same thing would be stupid, since it's hard enough to pinpoint the inner coils by normal means and near impossible when in a fight." Sakura nodded. He was right so far. She motioned him to continue. "The thing is, without that, I can't see how to do the same effects, so I'm still experimenting. I've also seen enough people practicing the gentle fist to do similar moves, and I'm figuring counters should I ever fight them." He neglected to mention that he'd heard of the chakra scalpel, a technique that required precise control to produce a cut inside the body without breaking the skin, which was undoubtedly engineered by a Hyuga and adapted by non-Hyuga medic ninjas, and when he'll eventually learn it, he would reverse engineer it to redefine the style to his taste. Nonetheless, his audience mouthed a wow at the impressive lengths made to steal a prized fighting style under their nose. He hoped that she'd be odd enough to never mention it again. But just in case. "You can't tell anyone?" She raised an eyebrow. "And if I do?" Of course she knew what would happen. All hell would break loose at the knowledge of an outsider genin stealing a prized family's art form. What she didn't know was that the fiasco would be much a bigger foray, considering this was the same demon boy that knew it. "You won't tell anyone," he stressed again. Ice underlined his statement. Sakura's survival instinct screamed at her to leave, and she looked up to finally notice that the clones had surrounded her. Fear reached her eyes as she desperately tried to come up with a plan to leave. "What I?" "Sorry, Sakura, But you've become a liability. Her eyes widened at those words. They both stood at the same time and her hands went to start a hand seal, her eyes never leaving his. A kunai stuck out of her neck, her breathing becoming labored. Vision was going red. Naruto was pushing it in harder, heart-stopping chest, feeling so painful, world spinning, can't breathe, going to die. Sakura gasped. Naruto hadn't moved an inch. Her thoughts swam in circles. She was sure it felt real. Naruto withdrew a kunai, and she moved to act. Her hands were only inches apart to complete the seal, allowing her to use kawarimi, so why couldn't she move it? You can't move out of fear, he said, drawing close. What do you mean? Her voice came out hoarse, almost a whisper, as her mouth was still locked in its panicked vice. Your arms. I've stopped you with killing intent. He was standing in front of her now. With tear-stricken eyes, she pleaded. Please don't do this. He had merely frowned sadly. I don't want to. Tears streamed down her face. Then don't. The kunai was now at chest level. There's no other choice. She took a shuddering breath as he closed her eyes for her, and his arms started moving of their own accord towards her neck. Then train me. And he froze, stopping at the last action. Train me, she repeated again, so that I can help you with your research. What? Mostly confused and a little skeptical. Not only having two viewpoints would help move things along quicker, but though I'm weak now, if you train me, I could become a good sparring and test partner. Naruto calmly mused upon the girl in front of him. Everything she said rang true. Thinking back on it, he would have to revise his opinion on the ordinary girl. Ordinary meant she wouldn't have a one-up on him with any special blood limits. This was good when he requires a testing partner or a second opinion, as they would have a similar base of comprehension without complicating things on being too knowledgeable of what their blood limit was more privy to. And if Sakura ever discovers him being the fox demon, the faster all his best laid plans fall to ruins. No, not an if but a when. She would undoubtedly find out sometime. But could he have a hold on her when the time comes? Coming to a conclusion, he grabbed her by the shoulders and forced her rigid body to pivot to face him. Do you swear you won't tell anyone what I say or do to anyone? Yes. Do you swear you won't use the techniques without my say-so? Yes. Do you swear to uphold anything I, as your teacher, say as law? Sakura had swallowed hard at the possibilities of the last one. Yes. Naruto took a deep breath, hoping that this gambit would pay off someday. Then I accept you as my apprentice. Sakura grabbed her mentor's hands and held them together, smiling. You won't regret it. They continued to stare into the other's eyes, knowing that something big would come about out of this, though Naruto hoped it wouldn't be something along the lines of a kunai in the back and a festival for doing so. Naruto was first to break eye contact, bafflingly glancing at her hands that his acceptance had brought enough will to procure herself out of his technique, but he waved it off to get back on track. Time for some rules. Holding out a finger, he started. Like what I made you promise, you cannot repeat anything you've learned from me, even if it's words or techniques, without my permission. This goes especially for when we take the exams. She nodded. 2 fingers up. You can't let anything be traced back to me. And I mean anything. If you keep a diary, a little bit of red crept up her cheeks. You can't write down what we do. If someone asks, lie about it. If you're followed, don't lead them here. Nodding on her part again. 3 fingers up. Though I am now a teacher to you, you will not call me that. We'll just stick by our names so that we won't accidentally say something else when we're not supposed to. A little odd, but she had no qualms, so again she nodded. 4 fingers up. You can't act differently outside of us training. She tilted her head at this one. Yes, that means you'll have to act the airhead around the ass. She gave him a deathly glare. And reject me when I ask for dates or training. Don't hold back when you feel like hitting me then either. An incredulous look, but she nodded all the same. She'd later learned to abuse that rule whenever she was particularly angry with her mentor's teachings. Okay, once I decide how to train you, I'll find you and key you in the details. Now it's 6 a.m. and Kakashi'll be expecting us in an hour and a half. Don't be late. He motioned her to get out. What? That sounds like an excuse to blow me off for a while yet. The sooner I learn something, the better I can be for when we spar. a little taken aback at how easily Sakura had went from fear to joy and now threatening in a matter of seconds. Being seconds away from death, how can you act like this? He had said what was on his mind. He needed to know at this point. She smiled and her hands went behind her back. I already figured you won't do it, she replied a little snootly. He folded his arms awaiting her to continue. I figured you can't kill me because an investigation would occur and they'd have to check on you since you're my teammate. Undoubtedly your neighbors might know or hear something, and then there's still the possibility that someone saw me carry you home last night. It's too risky, so you'll have to do something like put me unconscious and sneak me back into my room. Naruto was very impressed. She had described his plan word for word. Except she missed the part about driving a stake through his head once people hear it was the teammate of the demon kid that got killed, but she wouldn't have known of that part. And when did you figure this? When you froze me. You closing my eyes just set it in stone. Naruto let a smirk cross his face. He had to give her credit for thinking so far ahead and acting so well. Perhaps you're more perceptive than I realized. You forget, I graduated second to Sasuke because I lack stamina in taijutsu. No, he couldn't forget that. He felt a little respect for her in that case. Second to the top of the class, without a bloodline. So come on. Teach me already. I need to become stronger for Sasuke. Naruto snorted. At a time like this, and she feeds him an ulterior motive of doing so. For a boy no less. And I'm supposed to be the idiot, he muttered, shaking his head. She raspberried him indignantly and he chuckled. Giving in to her demands, he placed a foot on the wall. Followed by another, he kept on walking until he was looking at Sakura eye to eye at a 45-degree angle. She said nothing, watching with great interest. The point is to put chakra into your feet. Not too little or there's no traction, but not a lot cause it'll damage the surface and push you away, so you probably shouldn't practice on a wall inside your house. She processed it thoughtfully, as he made his way down. Do it enough and it'll help build your chakra. You'll need a lot to keep up with me. Now get out. I've got a lot to prepare for, especially now when I also gotta figure what to do with you. Agreeing completely, the pink-haired genin left elated on the idea that if she had advanced techniques under her belt, Sasuke would be sure to be impressed by her. Then there'd be love, and then comes marriage, and then a ninja baby in a baby carriage. Somberly in the back of her mind, she couldn't help but feel that she made a deal with the devil himself. Meanwhile, Naruto had closed the door and leaned heavily on it, not liking the turn of events. His relationship with Sakura had been easy enough from the beginning. Just latch on to some girl who'd been nice to him, and if her parents didn't follow it up, he'd stick with it. He'd seen it happen with multiple people and had easily discerned that those types were the most annoying. Thus it wouldn't look out of the ordinary of an idiot his age, as the ruse would keep well with his outward image. Choosing to graduate where his age wouldn't be suspicious, Sakura had happened along and things became convenient. Then came graduation and he was on the same team as her, and he'd have to keep acting as the love-struck moron instead of spending that time getting over her. And now, the demon in man's clothing had brought a hand to his chest, wondering just how keeping his body on autopilot had become troublesome. In the past, his mind would not give a second thought to some of the body's reactions, but as of late, he couldn't ignore it. On occasions of when Sakura did him ill, there was brief twinges in his chest, and of when she did him good, he could feel his heart beat faster. He had long since gone out of his way to bottle the emotions, but his guard had broken when Irika had came to his aid. But just now, when she was here, his chest tightened just a little. A little to an emotion he couldn't control. The same emotion that engulfed him when Irika defended him. That rampaging emotion he couldn't identify that was threatening to become stronger. And it scared him. It was early. Too early. It was so early that only the most annoying of birds were chirping at a time when the sun didn't even rise yet. For most denizens of any country, this would be an ungodly hour. To ninjas, most jobs tend to start at this sort of hour, so none of those reappearing folk were complaining much about it. So, though you have people who are up at this time, no one was particularly happy to be up at this time. However, there was one person that was running all the way to certain residents that was pretty excited. Oh yes, there was someone on her mind that'd help her become pretty strong. And then she finally reached her pretty little destination. "Morning, Naruto," she greeted, pretty spectrum rainbows and pretty glimmering sunshine flowing in every direction. She smiled. "What the hell are you doing here?" he flat-toned. And then Sakura was pretty bewildered. "You're gonna start training me," she replied. As far as she knew, she wanted to be with Sasuke. Sasuke was only interested in training and becoming stronger. Naruto pretended he was weak but was actually really strong and was always looking to research new techniques. She knew this and would help Naruto in exchange for training to catch Sasuke's eye. They had mutual interests. It wasn't complicated. "I didn't tell you to come back in the morning," he snorted. Then why the hell did Naruto try to complicate things? "You didn't give me a time to come back at all," she said, a little more forcefully than she intended. "For good reason," he said, though he did not add because he needed to devise a way to keep her on a leash. He did give a feeble excuse. "Besides, I gave you the wall walking exercise yesterday." With an impish smile, Sakura walked up his wall until they were eye to eye, to which she curtsied. "You picked that up fast," he said with a hint of amazement. "What can I say? I'm talented, beautiful, and a quick learner," she replied with a flourish. "And modest too," he snidely added. The female genin made a threatening motion to bodily harm Naruto, but he merely raised a brow at her unintimidated. So he got head slapped. "I still don't understand how you can act so prim and proper to Sasuke and just about everyone else, but come down to me and Ino and you're just as loud as I am," he lamented sourly, while rubbing the back of his irritated head. "Being cordial will get you anywhere," she said with a polite smile. Then her expression changed to a half-lidded gaze and the smile turned into a grin. "I'm just extra polite to those who have no manners." Though Naruto wanted to point out Sasuke should have been an exception to that, he conceded lest she be extra polite again. Sakura, on the other hand, had turned his question over in her mind. "You know, I still don't understand why you're different," she started. "I mean, you're undoubtedly some sort of genius, but you don't want people seeing that." Naruto simply folded his arms and smirked at her. "Tell you what. When you figure that, I'll start sharing with you my more interesting stuff." "What, dash?" she shrieked. "You're still holding out on me after your promise? Dash." Naruto raised a hand to calm her down. "I'll still keep on teaching you stuff, but there's no way I'm gonna have an inflexible thinker helping me with experimental techniques." "Fine, fine." Sakura crossed her arms. She sat down to start thinking when Naruto pulled her back to her feet. "There's always time for thinking. I've got to get you stronger now." She nodded dumbly and he began settling in a sitting state. "I used to take this stance for meditational purposes, and that was before I started practicing on deciphering the gentle fist. It should help build focus and start on a base for your stamina. Then I'll have you learn Kage Bunshin." He met her eyes, making sure she was listening. "If it's possible, you should get yourself some weights. To be specific, chakra weights to help build your base. They're rather expensive, which is why I don't have a set. Although if you can get your hands on a pair, put them either on your legs for speed or arms for strength, as they don't even look remotely like weights." And so Sakura's Naruto crash course training began. "How can you do this, dash?" The shrill cry coursed the humble apartment. "It's all about the focus. Use the pain to fuel the desire. Once you get used to it, it gets easier to do it longer," Naruto replied, albeit sternly. Then, adding as an afterthought, "And stop shouting so loud, Sakura." Sakura sighed from her vantage point. A handful of days had passed since her inauguration under Naruto, and for every day she'd sneak out of her home to his apartment during the early hours of the morning. Though he had been rather reserved that this wasn't a good idea, the third time had his resolve crumble and accept it outright. He reasoned that he could find another time to be flexible with the hours, but why change a working schedule? So then she'd get around an hour's worth of training for either building her stamina/chakra or, if she was lucky, a ninja technique, which as of yet she'd only received one. Then after the missions and attempting to coerce Sasuke into a date, she would go home and practice on what she'd learned. The time passing had her build a strong foundation for stamina, and she'd extended her chakra amount a good deal since she'd started. Probably with some help of the additional weights disguised as leg warmers, she could only afford one set, and so interchanged it with her arms as often as she could. All in all, she improved rather fast, but to get within her teammates' league, she would require another solid bulk of time yet. "Well, Naruto," she began sarcastically, "not everyone can be blessed with huge amounts of stamina." Huffing grouchily, she continued to verbally lash her mentor back. "And the other apartments are empty anyway. I think I should shout all I want. The last sentence had been committed with a single finger salute. Naruto rolled his eyes from his semi-sitting position, only he had somehow supported himself in an upright position where his right leg was bent at a 90-degree angle at the knee, whilst the other had been more at a 45-degree angle. His back was set at perfectly straight, and he had his hands in front of his chest held firmly in the tiger hand seal. All in all, he looked like he was in the correct back posture for sitting down, only there was no seat beneath him. There are still other neighborhoods. It'd be a problem for them to find out about this. He noted her being still seated on the floor. Now get back to your stance. She frowned at him but had said nothing and did not make any attempt to move. Still having had her full attention, Naruto decided to throw a little salt into the open wound and had shifted his left leg to lay on top of the other's knee. At seeing Naruto suspend himself using only one leg, his pink-haired companion scowled, grabbed the nearest object, a book, and flung it at her blonde teacher, who deftly caught it and opened it at a bookmarked chapter, all without missing a beat. Defeated, the pink-haired girl extended her impromptu break by seating herself cross-legged and meditating to get her chakra flowing regularly. So how's it going between you and the brooding one? Naruto asked. Sakura scowled. He always made light of her flirting with Sasuke. Probably because he least believed that he would return her advances. He's noticing me getting stronger. She spat. But it's still not enough, not like I could show off what I know anyway. Naruto nodded. It had been a rule on accepting her. How about we let him in and he can train with us too? Naruto had turned away and scowled. He knew the other boy would train hard too, but then where would it go? The boy would attain Sharingan, and he would take everything he would need, and then what? Sakura would likely revert back to a babbling wreck, and picking her up as an apprentice would be a moot point. Add the fact that with 2 apprentices, it was twice as likely he'd be found out. Best to err on the side of caution and keep only one focused apprentice. I'll think about it, he said with much conviction to not continue the topic. Sakura took it seriously and let it go. Eventually, she stood up and readied herself in the same position her trainer was in, though still rough around the edges as compared to his flawless stance. That reminds me, Naruto said, looking over to her from the book. You need to eat less of what I cook. This thought caused Sakura to lose her focus and her balance, having her fall on her rump again. However, instead of complaining at how he had caused her lapse in concentration or how it could have been a jab at her weight. But you cook way better breakfast than what I normally get at home, she complained. It caused Naruto to smirk wryly. I'm not telling you to stop eating what I cook, he admonished. Just less. People will get suspicious if you don't eat breakfast at home, and yet you seem to be getting fitter. He licked a finger and turned a page. Sakura couldn't argue that point but had pouted, not having to like the amendment. Naruto would often cook a grand breakfast, and because of her more athletic metabolism, she found that she was starting to catch up with the blonde boy's appetite. Not the full-on possibly eat 8 bowls of ramen in a sitting, but she now could definitely wolf down one and still be a little peckish for something else. About to resume again, Sakura took a quick glance at the clock and noted that it was nearly time for breakfast. If she didn't get cleaned up now, she would have to skip out on breakfast with her teammate and eat less satisfactory morning food back at her own home. Thus, a Sakura clone sitting at the sidelines then handed her a towel and a glass of water. Accepting gladly, Sakura regarded her Kage Bunshin with pride. Oh sure, she could only make 1 replication, maybe 2 in a day, though she wouldn't have enough chakra left for training or Kakashi's missions, but having help for the little things had been a godsend. Naruto had been adamant about not using it for luxury purposes, citing that many a ninja had been easily killed because of their lax ways when attaining a physical clone. Then he looked her seriously in the eye and swore that if her ability suffered because of it, he would beat the habit out of her. She gave him an incredulous look and motioned to the clone serving them breakfast, to point out the contradiction, when the clone had suddenly thrust a kunai into the throat of the Naruto sitting across from her. Sakura had watched in complete shock as her mentor had choked on his own blood for several seconds before he exploded, dispersing smoke within seconds. With a slow realization, it dawned on Sakura that the chef Naruto had been the real one whilst the clone had conversed with her the length of the whole morning. That day, Sakura had learned a valuable lesson about not abusing power. And so she wiped the sweat off and dispelled her clone. Naruto quietly observed his apprentice, as she headed for his bathroom to clean up. Then his gaze scanned the whole room. A book or 2 he didn't recognize. A small bag filled with spare clothes. A vase full of flowers. Hearing the sound of running water, and then being muffled when a body had interrupted the spray, had Naruto theorized that the bathroom cleaning agents she used was likely hers too. Just my apprentice for morning practices, and she practically moves in with me. He groaned in dismay. Returning to a standing position, he marched over to his chef clone and was quickly joined by the other clones. There they'd move in perfect synchronization, throwing between each other pieces of breakfast, cooking what needs to be cooking and arranging what was already done until everything was in place. A few scant minutes passed and Sakura returned to Naruto's presence, altogether fresher than when she had left, and had joined him to eat. Because of her tiring practice, Sakura took to her meal with much gusto, causing her mentor to shake his head. "Geez. Before long, you're gonna be eating like I am," he commented dryly, though he knew that it would take months of practice before her metabolism would be anywhere near as fast as his. But he'd only commented to slow her eating for the time being. She would have just ignored that if she didn't catch on something that had prodded at her in the back of her mind. "I'll be eating like you are when you start teaching me the advanced stuff." She then took a moment to bite into a piece of toast. "So when's that going to be?" He blinked naively. Of course he had reason to. "Have you figured out why I'm an idiot then?" Sakura cursed under her breath. She had forgotten that little detail as soon as he had started training her. "Damn it! I haven't been thinking about that." Naruto held up his hands innocently in an open hand gesture. "I thought you were smart." She was about to reply with a particularly nasty four-letter word and was ready to break into rants. "Apprentice." He said the word sternly without it sounding demeaning. It was a term he used on her a day or so ago, whenever he wanted her to take something seriously and focus. She looked up and analyzed his motions. He was pointing to his wrist and tapping it, staring expectantly at her. Oh, she was running late. "I've got to get going." She grabbed her bag with dirty clothes and ran for the door. "Thanks for the breakfast, Naruto-senpai." Among a few shortened teacher pet names, her most used being senpai, were terms she used for him not long since he started calling her his apprentice. She was quick to notice that he already broke one of his own rules and went on to abuse this for whenever she was feeling particularly playful or scandalous. He would always try to correct her, but she usually had none of that, using it only when she could get away with it. Like now, when she's running out the door. Naruto could only resign to wave her off. Once she was out of sight, he grabbed his latest shopping bill and skimmed through the prices, frowning at the tally. Having an apprentice was getting kinda expensive. "You're late." Two accusing fingers pointed at the not entirely embarrassed-looking Jounin. Sorry. I had a bet with Asuma, but you'll be happy to know that I won it." A visible closed eye turned upwards, obviously in high spirits. "It's not a stupid bet about being purposely late on us for the last week, was it?" The orange-clad boy folded his hands displeased. Hey, the teacher scratched the back of his head, completely sheepish. All his students ignited with unsurpassed fury that could only be summoned on either the villain killing your loved one, or when a friend really ticks you off. They also mentally noted to also force a pack of tobacco sticks down the bearded Jounin's throat. "But we got a mission today." The tension eased a little. "I know it's a regular D rank." Sakura and Naruto were slowly approaching their teacher, fully intent on throttling him into next week. Though Sasuke wasn't following their example, his hands twitched and he was with his teammates in spirit. "But Amit could turn A rank?" There was a break in forwarding, as the students exchanged confused glances. Kakashi used this distraction to get them moving to their mission. "So you want us to go in the bathhouse, replace the old stools and cleaning stuff with the new stools and cleaning stuff in less than 3 minutes? Sakura deadpanned. "That's a D-rank mission," Naruto pointed accusingly. "There's a catch. There's always a catch," Sasuke mumbled to himself. Kakashi gave Sasuke a hearty slap on the shoulder. "Sasuke is quite right. You all will have to split up and enter the bath. That's not of your gender." "What?" chorused the genin. Before long, collective murmurs and shouts of vehement denials rose in volume as the idea of a mutiny had unraveled, all agreeing that their teacher had gone too far. Fine. Meet back at the bridge." Their teacher called it off. "Well, that is Team 7's first mission failure," Kakashi sighed dramatically. "It was an unreasonable mission." Sakura folded her arms, frowning. Though Naruto and Sasuke visibly nodded, they had disliked the idea of staining their as of yet flawless mission achievements, even if it was something ridiculous as this. But neither wanted to be the first to fold. The Hatake Jounin had expected all of this, but he needed a way to explain certain things to his students. So instead of dismissing them likewise a normal mission would have typically ended when denied, he was going to push them on through. "So, what did we learn today?" Kakashi asked his team. A late teacher is a liar. Sakura went first. She had disliked the mission and disliked it further under this Jounin's tutelage. A late teacher is untrustable. Sasuke went second. His frustration was far too inconsolable at this point, and he had to voice his opinion. A late teacher is a pervert. Naruto had no grace for tact, as he jumped up and down whilst pointing out who was responsible for the debacle. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Time to set the record straight. Well, if any of you ever want to further your career as a ninja, there are times where you may be asked to do unsavory things, their teacher simply said in his defense. This caught his students' attention. It's not all about rescuing someone or guarding an item or picking off traitorous ninjas. Kakashi averted his gaze from his students. He was giving them advice to remember, and it drudged up some unwanted memories. This is especially obvious in AMBU. A client may ask us to get rid of someone or take out a rival business. These people could be working to restore poor countries or for any number of reasons benefiting the less fortunate. Sensing more than seeing the younger genin's eyes widen, Kakashi closed his visible eye and pinched the bridge of his nose. But that's life. The leaf can't afford to appear weak to the other hidden villages, and usually the absurd amount of money paid is helping repair the kind of damage done on an everyday basis. Training dummies for genin teams, better facilities, repairs for public domains whenever ninjas do property damage ranging from blast craters to roof hopping. That is terrible. Sakura gasped out. The money has to come from somewhere. Sasuke was quick to absorb it and sensibly accept it, though he didn't like it any better than his teammates did. Naruto's head hung low and he shook all over. Everyone turned to see his response but became a little worried at the display. Suddenly, the blonde boy turned to the others and held up a fist. When I become Hokage, I'll change all of that, he proudly swore. The rest of Team 7 managed a blink. Idiot. You just don't understand that being a ninja requires a lot of money. Where do you get the money you spend on? Sasuke sneered. He was well versed in thinking that a ninja has to be a sensible thinker and be willing to make sacrifices. Ha! When I become Hokage, I'll make the Leaf the strongest village among the other villages and we'll never have to worry about things like that again. He shook his fist, belief completely steadfast on the simple logic. They were just words, just wishful thinking. But it brought a smile to Kakashi all the same. After a few moments of watching his genin team squabble, he interrupted to finish the lesson. But remember, all the same, it is still our lives. We may not have to like what we do, but that's the way things are. Kakashi solemnly voiced. Then Naruto proceeded to get to his feet and pointed back to the direction of the bathhouse. Let's do the mission. And this time do it right, he declared. The other members reluctantly agreed. Good, unlike most missions, you're lucky you'll get a second chance this time. The silver-haired Jounin applauded the boy's determination. They were just about to reach the premises again when Sakura faced her teacher. Can you change the parameters for the mission at least? Sakura asked, still not comfortable with the objectives he gave. Fine. The Jounin gave in. It wasn't like the mission actually required to be done his way, he only set it up so he could give his insight to his students about the ninja world. One person is allowed to enter the bath of their gender. Otherwise, all of you will still have to refill the cleaning aids and replace the stools, the newer of each being located in the changing rooms. And you all have to do this as efficiently as possible, so it's going to be 2 minutes now. Whatever method you use is up to you. The Jounin shrugged. So we can't wait until it closes or find out a reliable time when it is empty, Sakura considered. And that means 2 of us still has to go, Naruto muttered. Only one person can save face, Sasuke hissed, his eyes narrowing at the prospect. And we can't have one member do nothing whilst the other 2 do the work. It would be a waste of resources and time. And it can't be me, Sakura admitted. If I went into the girl's side, that means both of you go to the boy's side and that would fail our mission requirements. If Sasuke comes with me, then we still fail because 2 people are still in their correct environments. Sasuke merely smirked and headed towards an entrance. It was only after he went inside that everyone caught on that he went into the men's side. Damn that guy. Naruto punched the nearest wall, having realized the full implications to be the one to enter the female side. Sakura and Kakashi winced, but had honestly expected something like this to happen. Well, a ninja must always be ready to face the unexpected, regardless if he wants to or not, Sakura said, giving her remaining teammate's shoulder a reassuring pat. Right, he said, a little disheartened, a blush crossing his cheeks. He gave a nod to Sakura, who returned it, and they both went their separate ways, their teacher retrieving his preferred reading device. It wasn't long before the screaming from the women's side had started up. The screaming had Sakura shake her head. Unlike Naruto, she had transformed before entering and didn't draw much attention to herself. Now to stop her blushing from being too obvious and stick with Sasuke without getting too close to other men here. The screaming had Sasuke smirk. He had expected this of his teammate. However, the amusement didn't last long as he got more uncomfortable with his situation. Sure, he was on the men's side, but Sakura was standing too close for his comfort. Normally, it would have been tolerable, but at the moment Sakura had created an illusion to make her appear male, which caused the other men to give them both weird looks. The screaming had Kakashi minorly distracted from his book. He was a little disappointed with his student, but reasoned that if the boy was any better at tactics, then he wouldn't have to go about embarrassing himself. A short time had passed and Sasuke and Sakura emerged, having finished their half of the duty. Sakura had looked oddly at her teacher at first, something crossing her mind. Kakashi-sensei? How did it go? Sakura interrupted her teacher from his reading. How did it go? He repeated. Naruto's not back yet. I meant about the women who'd be angry about how the mission was set up. She shrugged. Oh, he hadn't thought of that. And there's been more than enough time for someone to confront him, but no one did. Meaning that something wasn't just wrong. No. It actually meant something was very wrong. But before Kakashi could act on it, Naruto did come out, dusting his hands in satisfaction. Now, Naruto was a young boy. He probably explained to them that he was the janitor, and they probably let it slide with his age, but that snickering was definitely not a good sign at all. At least, not for his teacher, that is. You know, Naruto, I almost hate to ask you, but just how did you go about to doing your tasks? Kakashi asked, a little worry creeping into his voice. I looked underneath, sensei. And I had someone help me, he proudly stated. And with that, Naruto used Henge to transform into the spitting image of Kakashi himself, wearing a towel wrapped at his waist, the usual mask around his face, and the forehead protector, which covered both eyes. The Naruto masquerading as Kakashi extended a hand in greeting, whilst keeping the other at his waist to hold the towel up. Yo! Sakura had burst into giggles. Sasuke couldn't help but crack a smile as well. They both knew that whatever's coming was because their weird teacher did deserve it. Kakashi's sweat dropped. He now had a really bad feeling about where this was going. And how did you receive help from imitating me? Easy. I went in as you and everyone got angry, but someone realized I couldn't be you and told everyone to calm down. Then she took me out and I told her about your training, and she decided to help me out. Oh? Yeah, she should be on her way out now. And out stepped Kurenai. Never before did Kakashi really feel the need for the preservation of his life clashing with the absolution to get what's coming to him, as running would definitely make it worse. Hello, Kakashi. Her voice had a bit of steel lining it. Hi, Kurenai-san. He stammered back. You have a peculiar way of training your students, Kakashi. She commented offhandedly, not even glancing at said genin. I tried to make the mission less ordinary by turning it into a miniature espionage. You know, a little team building, a little explanation about the real world sort of thing, he admitted. Seeing her cracking her knuckles, Kakashi could only back into a corner and take a fetal position, his genius thinking held back by the flood of survival instincts reserved for indignant women. So what have we learned from all this? Kakashi asked his students. Never piss off Kurenai-sensei, Naruto said in a sage-like way. His eyes were closed, and he nodded his head slowly and solemnly. Guys shouldn't enter the women's side of the baths, Sasuke said in a completely serious tone. Though not as sage-like as Naruto, he still held conviction in his words. Sometimes, a ninja must get their hands dirty, Sakura said before adding, especially if they want to pound perverts. Kakashi sighed from the confines of the hospital bed. Did you learn something from today, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked. That I will never try to make D-rank missions more interesting for my students, the silver-haired Jounin said glumly. The genins had a good chuckle about it, and their teacher set about dismissing them. But before they were out the door, he called their attention to address his serious piece so his students could reflect on it. Just don't forget our lesson today, Kakashi reiterated. Sometimes a ninja must do what they don't want to do. We don't have to like it, but it's a mission and we must do it to the best of our abilities. He gave them a curt nod. We are ninja. We are ninja, Sakura mumbled to herself. She had went about her day normally and was now preparing for sleep, her mind locked on her teacher's parting words. Something about the statement rang in her mind like a key piece to a jigsaw. Problem was, she had millions of other jigsaws still incomplete. And it was still on her mind when sleep had finally taken her. She had a dream about a spy. A spy in a village of very important people. But everyone had known he was a spy. So the spy did the one thing that no one wouldn't believe, and everyone laughed when they saw him stuck getting into an open window, laughed when he'd sneak around corners in plain sight, laughed when he bragged about being ASPY.SO. They'd invite him over for drinks. And they'd all get wasted, and they would tell him things. They'd invite him to meetings, and he'd spill coffee all over his papers, and they would chuckle and let him keep it. They'd invite him to secret exhibitions, and he'd fall all over himself, his notepad filling in with obscurities, nonsense, and doodles that no one ever gave a second look at. But it came as quite the shock when they found he had learned everything from them. Then Sakura woke with a start. The realization had struck her. Oh my God. Naruto had answered the banging at his front door, still clad in his striped pajamas, the odd bear cap and a sleepy-eyed expression. Hey Naruto! She beamed at him. The sleepy boy looked from the chirpy girl standing outside his door, then to the nearest clock and then back to the chirpy girl. You're 2 hours early, he moaned. Her barely contained excitement had her shaking, and so he surmised she didn't look like the type to leave any time soon. So he let her in and started on his shadow replications to begin his morning ritual. I finally figured it out. Her thoughts were being thrown left, right, and center, trying to make order of the startling revelation. Yeah? Her sentence had caused him to focus. He stood straight now, and the beginnings of his grin started to tug at his features. Sakura had taken a few seconds still. Her eyes watched her right as she read something only she could see. A ninja's asset is darkness. Always to hide in shadow and strike when the enemy least expects it. We are born to live and die in silence. It is the way of the ninja. Her opening had brought a smile to his lips. You adhere to everything the pact is. Though a ninja's asset is darkness, your clothing and loud attitude is what makes people ignore you. You don't hide in the background, you hide in the foreground. People don't notice your true strength because they underestimate you, and that's how you get the better of them. And for all your big talk, you never say anything, at least anything worthwhile. She was babbling. She knew it, she knew he knew it, but she didn't care. She hit on something huge, and he smiled at her for noticing it. Then she went for her coup de grace. A ninja is a master of deceit. Her eyes flew around wildly. And you've deceived a village of ninjas. Naruto now had a full-out grin. She had outlined him perfectly. And so they both stood there for a moment, herself reveling in the unbelievable realization she had stumbled on, and himself basking in pride. The moment stretched. Deceived a village of ninjas. She murmured just soft enough for him to miss it. There was a little prick in her chest when she said it. Something felt really wrong about the sentence. But... Clap. Then a single clap broke the sound of silence. Clap. Which did another follow. It brought Sakura out of her quiet musings, and she looked over to Naruto to find him doing the action. Clap, clap. Then there were more, and she turned to notice the clones that were around the house put their hands together. Clap, clap, clap. And slowly but surely there suddenly were more clones fading into sight, all clapping. And the sound became a thunderously soft ovation. For her. A red hue crossed her cheeks at the thought of a crowd applauding her. Now thoroughly embarrassed, she turns to the first Naruto she addressed, assuming he was the original. You're acting as if this was a really big deal. She fiddled with the hem of her attire. It is a really big deal, he replied, still amused. She glanced back at all the clones that were starting to dwindle. The blush was fading, but the smile stayed. So the real Naruto had caught her attention. Yeah? It begins. 1. If Sakura had paid more attention to her dream, she would have realized one vital flaw. A spy's allegiance isn't exactly to the people they are spying on. But her train of thought had already left the station, focused on a Sasuke-oriented goal. The sun rose and Team 7 waited patiently for their teacher to arrive to meet them at the bridge. Never mind, it was nearing 2 hours past their scheduled time. Naruto sat swaying on the rail of the bridge. Sasuke sat relaxing, on a branch in his usual tree. Sakura sat all by her lonesome self, humming brightly whilst leaning on a bridge post. When all of a sudden, Naruto stopped swaying and a slow realization crossed his features. I just thought of something. Sasuke smirked. A remark about Naruto's thinking ability danced in his mind, but he wasn't about to lower himself to that level at this point in time. Their pink-haired companion wasn't so forestalling about her own remark. That's a first. Naruto ignored Sakura and turned to face his teammates. Didn't Kurenai-sensei do a number on Kakashi yesterday? His other teammates blinked in unison. Sakura then groaned loudly as the full implications hit. Sasuke tilted his head back, trying to force the growing headache away. We might as well go check up on him. Sakura got up and dusted herself off. Yo. A regular greeting. You're late. A standard return. But Kakashi did not give an excuse and instead smirked eerily, if it was visible by any normal means. Actually, my students, it is you who are late. For I am confined here, he said, quite happy with the turn of events. Through fractured logic, did the genins accept this assessment, as they really should have known to come to Kakashi's room instead of wait at the bridge. With the ball in his court, Kakashi kept it rolling. Now Kakashi clasped his hands with glee. Let's hear your excuses. He received 3 different tones of Lost on the Road to Life, causing him to lightly cackle to himself. Weren't you ever gonna send someone to tell us you couldn't make it there? Sakura asked, despising the idea that her teacher was in the right this once. Hell no! Kakashi folded his arms, completely steadfast to his belief. As my students, I have high expectations that you would know that my stay here would have been for a longer extent. His team groaned in disgust. Well, since I am unable to retrieve any sort of missions for us to do, nor can I supervise your training, you all will have to do so without me for a couple more days. And his students relished this idea. But don't get out of shape. When I get out, I'll get a mission to make you guys wish you were having D ranks all over again. Naruto and Sakura whooped while Sasuke silently praised the thought. Now get out. I need to rest up. As the genins filed out, Kakashi mused on the kind of mission he would require for them to learn a bigger lesson. Maybe a C rank with bandits would be good. A little blood will jolt them enough to prepare them more for the world. He let the thought hang, as his other hand sneaked behind his head and retrieved a certain book from underneath his pillow. Then his room was filled with the sounds of immature giggling. So Sasuke, Sakura started, sliding up to the raven-haired boy. No. He cut the middleman. But I haven't even. She tried again. No. He cut that line. How Abio? No. That bud didn't even have the chance to blossom. Defeated, Sakura hung limply, letting her beloved to go on his way unhindered. Once Sasuke was at a far enough distance, Naruto then took his chance to ask Sakura out. There's always me, Sakura-chan. The pink-haired girl cringed, though the thought didn't sound so bad lately. But she still had a reputation to uphold. No way. Naruto deflated and started on his way. Are you going to go train later, Naruto? She asked, before he got too far off. Naruto faced her, raising a brow at the question. I want to work on my skills a bit later. She shrugged, appearing aloof to the idea. His eyes focused. He'd recognized it as a subtle plea for help on the techniques she was learning. Fortunately, he had extra time after he'd help along his gardening project. I guess I will. He shrugged. I'll be at our team's regular spot in an hour, and I'll probably be there for most of the day. She nodded thankfully, and they went their separate ways for the time being. Did you manage to work it out between our training now and the early morning? He asked, easily avoiding the hit directed at him. No. She huffed. It's pretty tough. Takes a lot out of me. She threw another hit to which he backed just out of range. Read any texts then? Nope, but I'm thinking of going to a library before lunch. I need a good idea of what to look out for. He nodded absently. I suppose. But I'd still go with my first recommendation. Once you get the basics down, the rest of it does itself. You go read up on something complex and it'll be all the more tiring every time you do it. Though disgusted with the idea, Sakura had to admit that it did have some merit. Because of this distraction, she nearly forgot to backflip over Naruto's next attack. Seeing her attention diverged, Naruto decided to throw in some incentive. Better she learn the technique before Kakashi gets out of the hospital. Tell you what. When you can do the technique, I'll let you in on a way you can get Sasuke's attention. He lunged again, only for his opponent to be already heading back to town. I'll have it down in no time then, she called over her shoulder. Expecting as much, Naruto smirked and continued his stamina training. Sakura sighed. It had been rather embarrassing that Ino had shown up on several occasions, each time blocking her attempt on her self-imposed mission and cleanly crushing the fortress of courage she'd built up. Damn her! In fact, the other girl had gotten so nosy that Sakura couldn't bear it anymore and left. Ino, seeing her rival retreat, pulled up the chase and went on to get under Sakura's skin. Ino had been persistent. Very persistent. It was lucky that she received additional stamina training and had replaced her leg weights onto her arms, or Ino might have got the better of her and things would have gone downhill pretty fast. Sakura only managed to evade her pursuer long enough to promise the girl tell her some other time, though Sakura filed that under as never. Arriving at the outskirts of her team's regular training spot, she spotted a familiar face she hadn't seen in a while. Hey Hinata! Sakura greeted as she approached the Hyugaris, though she also wondered if any of the teams were doing any sort of training or missions at all today. Oh. Hi Sakura. Hinata returned the greeting timidly, followed by a bow. No need to be so formal with me, Hinata-chan. Sakura waved it off. Alright. Blushing a little, Hinata looked away. Sakura then took it on herself to press on. How are things on your team? Sakura inquired. Well, I guess our team is doing fine. Kiba is really energetic and Shino usually keeps to himself. We've only had some D-rank missions lately. Hinata returned in light detail. Any C-rank yet? No. Has your team? Nope. Although Kakashi-sensei said he'd be getting one for us in a few days. Then Sakura caught herself. Not that it might be a C-rank, mind you. He said he was going to get us a mission that wasn't D-rank, so it has to be C-rank. It's unlikely administration would give Genin to do anything higher than that. Hinata nodded her head. Isn't Kakashi-san injured? Yeah, but said he would do it when he gets out. Then the thought occurred, wondering how Hinata knew that piece of information. How do you know that? Kurenai-sensei told us and cancelled training today. I think she's going to go and apologize. Too. Sakura paused a little and looked over Hinata's shoulder to see Naruto beating up on a dummy like he usually does. Are you here to see Naruto? She asked slyly. Huh? Hinata gasped, her face turned a shade of red. Hinata turned an even deeper shade of red under Sakura's scrutiny. Oh, you must be very busy. I must be on my way, Hinata stammered, turning to leave. I'll see you later, Hinata-chan. Sakura waved her academy friend off. Hinata had returned it as she retreated further away. Once the other girl had left, Sakura finally found her chance to approach Naruto, who had just stopped to take a break and merely lay face up on the ground. She briefly looked up, wondering if there was anything worth seeing. Then he chose to speak. I think Hinata's on to me. Confusion marred Sakura's face. Why would you say that? She's always spying on me. I never really did expect her to be able to see under my guise, but I guess I should have expected it with her blood limit and the fact that she's from the Hyuga main house. Sakura tried to hold her laughter in, but found that she couldn't. Ha 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 ha. This really isn't a funny matter. If the Hyuga find out I've been imitating their style, they'll want to kill me. Haha, no, not that, hee hee, Sakura managed to say in between wheezes for air and the occasional chuckle until she composed herself. She likes you, she mirthfully declared. Naruto blinked. What? He sat up now. I mean it. It's obvious that she's got a crush on you. She hunched over on her toes and poked him square in the forehead when she addressed him. I don't get it, Naruto shook his head. She likes you like the way I like Sasuke. She couldn't help but add a little annoyance to the last sentence. But she doesn't throw herself at me, like the way you do to Sasuke or I do to you. Sakura rolled her eyes. The brief thought that though Naruto is a once-in-a-blue-moon genius doesn't excerpt him from being obliviously male. It was an easy subject after all. You don't have to. Sakura held up her hands, extending only the index and middle digits. Throw yourself at someone to show that you like them. Sheesh. Oh. So what do I do? Are all men this dense? Sakura mumbled to herself but was quick to speak up. Just hang out with her. Talk with her. You know, take her out to eat and stuff? And train too? Sakura gave him a level gaze. Yeah, that too. She sighed. But that's not really all that romantic. But I don't really have ties with her. His brows furrowed. Of course you don't. Just be friends first. She snapped. Friends? Naruto tested the word on his tongue. Don't tell me you don't know what friends are. Sakura cried out, exasperated, throwing her hands up, completely distraught with how dense he was being. Naruto looked away. An uncomfortable silence settled. The effect had Sakura refrained from a tirade and instead examined the boy in front of her. Flicking through various memories, she had tried to picture a face that often frequented him in the academy. She couldn't find a memory of that at all. In fact, any memory had him actually isolated from the others. Alone. You really don't know, do you? She asked softly. For a reason he couldn't fathom, a fragment of Naruto's mind was locked into replaying the scene with Iruka and Mizuki time and time again. Though it didn't detract from his logical focus, it did have an odd effect on his physical body. Like tightening his throat enough to make swallowing a little difficult and far more audible than it should be. I think Iruka-sensei and I are friends, but I don't know. He'd finally replied. Do you both hang out, eat out, talk about anything? A little pity seeped into the question. Yes, all of that. He nodded. But I haven't seen him in a while. The admission had constricted his chest a little too. But do you both like hanging out with each other? He didn't trust himself to speak. Just nod. Then you're friends. There was a little relief and even a hint of joy in the declaration. He turned to her, his face a mixture of doubt and hope. Really? Yeah. A warm feeling had coursed through Naruto. A pleasant calm had brought him back a smile, but it had gone as quickly as it appeared when he suddenly tensed again. Sakura recognized it and let the silence flow and waited patiently for Naruto's last question. Would you consider being friends with me, Sakura? His voice had been soft and fragile, as if the slightest breeze could have taken it away and into the winds. Sakura gave a tender smile and stepped behind the seated boy. Her arms encircled him, and she pulled him into an embrace from behind, her chin resting on his wild, unkempt hair. I would love to be your friend, Naruto-kun, she replied just as softly. There was another pause, as each closed their eyes and savored the moment. Thank you? Eventually, Sakura had left, off to her own training whilst Naruto pondered on what to do for the moment. He considered that if what Sakura had said was true, that the Hyuga heiress actually had a crush on him, and not spying and plotting his demise, then he should repay her courtesy with a visit. Additionally, she happened to be walking information since he did not have the instruction to replicate the gentle fist attacks, but merely the movements. Resolved to searching for her, it took him some time to locate her team's usual training spot, seated with her back to the training post. She was curled up and breathing loudly. From what Naruto could see, she was tired or upset. Or likely both. From the academy, Naruto had known her to be both an easily upset and introverted girl. Though graced with a noble clan, she had little to no qualities to be able to fit in either within the clan or with the other normal children. In short, she was a plain-looking dark weirdo. Best to test the waters then. Hinata-chan? Naruto called out, approaching the seated girl. And Naruto-kun! She exclaimed, shocked at seeing Naruto approaching her. What are you up to? He inquired, grinning up a storm. I was just training, was her reply. But I kind of stopped for a bit. She gestured to the post behind her embarrassedly. Ah? The fox boy held his chin in contemplation. Hinata quaked a little under his intense scrutiny. Then he looked around to take in the surroundings. No one else was in the area, so Naruto found it safe to ask about his next question. Wanna train together? The blonde boy started to scratch at his head a little nervously. 'Cause you know Sasuke thinks he's all that and above everyone, and then Sakura's only about Sasuke anyway. Hinata had been pleasantly surprised. She had thought that perhaps the Naruto's pink-haired teammate would have started reciprocating his advances by now. And though she felt a little winded, she knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to be able to get closer to the person she looks up to. Okay. And so they fought. A dark-haired girl moved swiftly this way and that, with simple gestures here and there. But it did not matter. For every push she gave, an invisible knife struck within the opponent's own body. Not that she would actually injure Naruto-kun, mind you. He was a person she looked up to. Then a blonde boy would deftly move in and ruggedly attack here and there, blocking and absorbing every strike. In truth, the boy was merely observing and committing what was important to memory, whilst his body probed his partner's attacks and defenses and adding to her muscle memory to move correctly to certain standard attacks. Not that he was friends with Hinata-chan enough to train her, mind you. He was just testing the full gravitation of her own strengths and weaknesses. It was some time later that they mutually agreed to halt. Naruto was inwardly displeased. Not only had she pulled her punches, but she was also mixing some of her Hyuga gentle fist style with the Academy's hand-to-hand standard combat. He mused to put an end to that. You know, Hinata, you're not really hitting me. Don't you guys have like some sort of really kick-ass taijutsu style? He whined. Why yeah, but I know how to use it, and I don't want to hurt you. Hinata looked away, embarrassed at being caught out. Nonsense. Come on. Fight me for real. I can't stand it if you're just gonna go easy on me, he said resolutely. I don't know, she scratched the back of her head. Please? Bright cerulean, glimmering eyes pleaded. Oh, okay. She couldn't find the heart to disagree. Another workout had occurred, this time going for even longer than the last session. Hinata had sat, her breathing haggard. She had never trained herself up to this point, and it was only pure will alone that she'd get this far to try to impress the boy. Naruto, on the other hand, stopped to review what he knew of her techniques. And he found that though the Hyuga family style was indeed a marvel, it was also flawed. He also had yet to see any of the Hyuga's most impressive fabled techniques. But all of that was probably due to the girl's poor acrobatics, low stamina, and inability to fight fiercer. This isn't working out, Hinata. He sighed. What? She looked up surprised. You're just not fighting back. It's not really training. Naruto shrugged. It was personally the first thing she expected and the least of what she ever hoped to occur. Even he gave up on her. I'm sorry. She apologized. Seeing her crestfallen look, Naruto held up his hands. No. Don't be sorry. You want to get stronger, right? A grin was pulling at his features. Why yes, she stammered, wondering exactly where this was going. But you don't want to hurt people? He wanted to confirm. I guess, and that she deflated again. I'm sorry. No. It's alright. I was thinking this time. The grin was in full swing and his mind was going a mile a minute. Excitement was building pretty quickly. Hinata only looked on, a little intrigued by what was going on in Naruto's head. You can use your freaky eye thing to see lots of things, right? His excitement was definitely flowing now. Sorta. She was a little dismayed to have her prized blood limit be labeled off as a freaky eye thing. And you probably can see inside their body and their chakra and how it moves and stuff, right? His excitement was practically bubbling over the brim by now. I suppose she prepared herself for the question he built up to. Why don't you change your fighting style? He plainly asked. See, change it? Hinata's jaw went slack. To a Hyuga, the gentle fist was everything. To even consider changing it was blasphemy. But it was true. Her own father acknowledged that she was weak and was already preparing her sister, Hanabi, for a mantle she may not receive. Yeah. See, like we could make a fighting style where you don't really hurt people. And ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. And so not only was Naruto speaking a sheer amount of blasphemy, but there was a substantial amount of utterly ridiculous insanity to beat the already dead horse. And though utterly ridiculous and sheer blasphemous, the idea had merited to bring back a sliver of hope to Hinata's face. Is that possible? wishful thinking backing her question. Yeah. His energetic response had cemented the trust she placed into him. Naruto then started rifling through his pockets, pretending to look for an object that he may have misplaced. In actual truth, he mentally debated the pros and cons of giving Hinata a certain scroll in his possession. He had found this scroll whilst going through the rubbish of a shop that regularly threw out objects that either were too damaged or were too outdated to sell. Naruto had lucked out when he found this one. Not only was it outdated, but it was also waterlogged, burned, dirty, and had huge instances of missing chunks of text. Generally far too mangled even for him, he was still determined to see it through and spent a handful of weeks cleaning it up to find a diamond that it really was. He was keeping it around for when he could learn the gentle fist and then combine both arts, but now it seemed like the only way to be able to earn Hyuga instruction would be to tutor her, and then have her unknowingly tutor him. So Naruto made his gamble. He pulled out a worn-looking blue scroll. Hinata dared not to take it, but Naruto held it out to her insisting. So she accepted and carefully opened it. Mizunag no taijutsu, the art of flowing water? She mumbled aloud. She'd never heard of this style before. Hinata blurred over bits and details. The scroll was old and there were at least 3 different styles of handwriting she could detect. The first was clearly the original scribe of the scroll, whilst the other 2 appeared as footnotes. However, one note in particular captured Hinata's attention. Classified scroll number 84. Property of Yamagakure 3, then the thoughts sunk in. The hidden village of Ocean? She gasped. But that village was wiped out during their first generation, she said pointedly at Naruto. He shrugged. He'd already known that tidbit. It took a few years of on and off research to learn as much as he did about the scroll and had written his own set of footnotes, not in the decaying scroll, that would be stupid. Surmising that his apathetic reply was because it had gone over his head, Hinata applied herself to skimming through the scroll. It was a few moments later she stopped, awestruck. A lot of this is primitive, but it's amazing. It has ideas to turn your opponent's strength against them using only their own momentum and strength. Then she shook her head, clearing away the cobwebs. She realized that this scroll was a part of history and possibly far too valuable to be in her care, much less she be worthy of trying to learn it and adapt it to her own style. I can't accept this. She held it back to Naruto, who didn't make a move to accept it. Nah, Hinata-chan. He waved it off. I tried learning that stuff, but I like hitting people more, you know? Before she could protest, he continued. Besides, he wiped his hands on his pants. You ought to learn it. It looks like you could use it better than I could. But. I insist. He'd covered her extended hand with his. A full blush had crossed her face and she'd cowed a little, completely embarrassed from the gesture. Let's make this our secret, okay? He asked, a grin exploding on his face. Why, yeah. She agreed. What else could she do? Then he pulled away and started heading out of the training spot. I'm pretty much bushed. I'll catch up with you tomorrow, Hinata-chan. She waved back to him and glanced back at the scroll. Tonight, she'll be going through it as best she can to live up to Naruto's expectations tomorrow. It was some hours later that Naruto had found himself back home, staring into his mirror's stony visage. It wasn't that he was at a point grooming himself. No. Far from it. He needed his reflection to be able to reflect on things. No pun intended. And it was all in turmoil. His thoughts were in turmoil. Sakura and he were friends. Our friends. And since he'd graduated, he'd taken to purposely avoiding his academy teacher, for reasons he couldn't voice. Only now to find out that the man was a friend too. In fact, it was seeming more likely that Sarutobi, Hinata, Kakashi, and even Sasuke could relatively be penned under the same term. Friends, he murmured. It held a lilt of hesitance and longing. Naruto had unconsciously smiled that stupid grin of his. Then he'd opened his eyes and eyed it warily. It was less fake than he remembered. Smash. Naruto removed his bloodied fist from the remains of the mirror, dislodging a few more shards from the spiderweb-like cracked surface. It changes nothing. A rising sun, cloudless skies, birds in song. Morning was in full swing for all. Sorry I'm late, Naruto. I was up all night. He waved her off. It's ALRIRK. He found himself at the receiving end of a head slap. I can't get this technique to work. For others, morning was going a bit slower than normal. The first day. I'm starting on breakfast already. Hurry up. Naruto's voice called out over the hiss of the frying pan. What's the hurry? Sakura walked over, procuring a plate and utensils from her shadow clone that was setting the table. It's not like we have to meet our teacher today, she continued, seating herself at the table while her host's subordinates brought about the meal. You're still expected at your breakfast table, he pointed out and proceeded to remove the apron he wore, before hanging it on the pantry door. Oh right. The pink-haired genin blanched a little, forgetting that teeny detail. I better get ready. She quickly made her way to the bathroom as to get washed up before her meal. Entering the bathroom, Sakura found it odd that the mirror was missing. At first, she'd been compelled to give a shout to Naruto about it, but then an odd, red residue underneath the bathroom cabinet door had drawn her attention instead. Upon closer inspection, she'd found more residue, though just faintly lining within the grain of the cabinet. Blood? She murmured hesitantly. A quick scan of the floor confirmed that there wasn't a mess. Unable to find a connection, Sakura continued with her morning routine, though her mind kept returning on this subject. She could only reason that perhaps he'd fell into it. Though that would be very unlike him. Very unlike him at all. You're late. I don't care. Naruto had wandered over next to his teacher, and, for inexplicable reasons, promptly went on to muss the bedridden Jounin's hair. With Kakashi's eyes in his book, the silver-haired tutor had helplessly attempted to defend himself with his free arm, but Naruto succeeded in messing up his bed hair anyway. Visiting hours begin long after we're supposed to meet, Sasuke deemed to correct the reason they were late. Well, we only got around to visiting you since you haven't bothered telling us when you will be getting out, Sakura had told her distracted teacher. I want status reports each morning for everything my team has accomplished the day prior, whilst I am in this predicament. Kakashi folded his arms to appear intimidating. The effect proved impossible when his visible eye refused to distract itself off the current page of his book. I did a few hours of training yesterday. Sakura volunteered to lead. I practiced on my fire techniques once I left the hospital, Sasuke reported dryly. I went out for ramen for the whole day. Naruto laughed. Then he settled on using his teacher's already mussed hair even further. Again the man's free arm attempted to fend the boy off, though it still proved to be a helpless defense with his attention elsewhere. Everyone, except the blonde genin, shook their heads in bemusement. Did you do any sort of training, Naruto? The Jounin hoped that was the case with his odd trainee and get him to stop with messing with his hair. Oh, I beat up the dummy, I guess. The orange-clad boy stopped his activities, holding a finger to his chin while he remembered. Before Kakashi lost all hope for the boy, Naruto then also added. Oh, I caught up with Hinata. He closed his eyes and grinned, tucking his arms behind his head. We hung out a bit too. That sentence caused Sakura to tilt her head at the prospect. Kakashi carefully mulled over Naruto's words, though it looked like he was carefully considering the current paragraph in his book. Then he giggled, confirming where his focus was at that point. And good work, all of you. Kakashi fumbled after realizing that everyone was expecting an answer out of him. Keep it up and all of you train more. At such a casual dismissal, Naruto lost his temper. How the hell do you expect to be a good instructor and a good ninja, when all you do is read that stupid perverted book, dash? His teammates had agreed with him wholeheartedly. Kakashi merely turned his head slowly to face Naruto. There was even an eerie creaking noise that accompanied it, as if Kakashi was imperatively shocked at what he had heard. Naruto nearly felt like taking back his words. You may question my teaching methods, the Jounin started. His voice sounded hollow and his students found themselves a little uncomfortable. You may question my position. The atmosphere darkened as Kakashi's battle aura started building. Everyone took a hesitant step back. You may even question my skill. His voice now deepened to a foreboding tone, an effect akin to the oblivion of the grave. The genin were now having a really bad feeling about this. But never the eye without Sharingan had flashed red. Never question the Come series. Then there were flowers and hearts and bunnies, and he hugged his book tightly and passionately. It's just too good. You could practically see the little love heart punctuating his statement. Team 7 slumped, individual sweat drops lined their heads. Then turned to leave in disgust. silently agreeing that the man needed a girlfriend to set him straight. It's a tale of loyalties, friendship, love, and life. A must-read for everyone, he called out after them. Everyone 18 and over, I mean. Though no one noticed, Naruto's step had briefly faltered, but he continued his exit. What are you gonna be up to, Naruto? Sakura asked. She was still a little perturbed about the thought of Naruto's visit to Hinata. Something about that thought had upset her a little, but it was his business, and not hers. Naruto carefully considered what he'd have to do today. There was that project he was still working on. And another or two also waiting and the damn mirror. In a way he was glad she didn't bring it up, but that also brought about its own suspicion too. I got stuff to do. Meet at our regular training spot in an hour or two. The sun rose over the sky, casting shadows directly below everyone's feet. It was afternoon before Sakura had located her mentor for secret training, and she found him with his back exposed, as he hunched over something just out of her view. Hey Naruto! She called out. Hey! Came his unenthusiastic reply. A little taken aback that he didn't even turn in her direction, she ran over to peer over his shoulder. What V you got? Her question was left hanging. Naruto was nose-deep in reading a book. That book. Sakura had wanted to scream, in fact she did. Pervert! She accused, recoiling backwards with her arms held up defensively. He didn't reply, but merely turned the page. I can't believe you would stoop that low to read that book, she accused again, unable to believe that he was capable of that. He did not turn his head to dispute it. He suffered that same affliction that Kakashi had earlier, namely the loss of will to tear his eyes off the page he was reading. I have to admit, it is pretty good. It was a shameless admission. Before she could scream her now sky-high annoyance, he interrupted. Have you learned the technique yet, apprentice? He asked casually. Inhale. Back to business. Exhale. No. Sakura winced, having most of the irritation just disperse at the serious tone he employs whenever he trains her. Do you still want to train? He offered. I'm pretty sure you spoiled the mood for that, she replied sourly. Well, he turned a page, you have something to work on. Let me know how you did tomorrow. Sakura complied and walked off, still heated at the whole situation. Do all teachers become perverts? It was later in that afternoon that Hinata had waited at her team's usual training spot, leaning on the training dummy. Hinata was the heiress of the Hyuga, possibly the most prestigious family in all of the Hidden Leaf. Because of this title, there are a great deal many expectations that come with her title. Most of which she can't meet. She lacks confidence to believe in herself. She lacks absolution to inflict pain. She lacks conviction to look down on others. It is because of all of those reasons that her father had just about given up on her, and will likely pass on her heritage to her sibling. But it is because of all these reasons that Hinata knows she can be strong. It is this resolve that gives her enough strength to search for her own strength. Which leads back to the current moment. Hey Hinata-chan! She looks his way and smiles. She needs a helping hand to find that strength and prove that she can be just as strong, if not stronger, than the title expected of her. No matter how unconventional she would have to become. Hello Naruto-kun. Her returned greeting had wavered a little, but she was very enthusiastic about what was to come. He had shown up the same time last time, as they hadn't negotiated a time to meet up again. Did you look the scroll over last night? Yes, I did. So, what did you find out? With a flourish, Hinata carefully withdrew and opened the same blue scroll Naruto had given her yesterday, animatedly pointing at the different sections as well as explaining her findings. I think whoever wrote this must have wrote it before the hidden villages had been created, she said. Over here and here, her hand pointed to various instances on the paper, referenced events before even Konoha had been established. A pause, pale eyes straining all over the ancient text. He didn't write anything about blood limits, so it's pretty likely that he constructed this style to survive against fighting in general. Then Hinata had gone on to point at a different sort of handwriting, most of which adorned the scroll right after the initial script. And then the second scribe had actually been the Tsunemikage, the title's shadow himself. She indicated to the property listing, as well as a few of the notes that did have writings based on the second scribe's own opinion, easily narrowing down the owner's identity. He included his own variations and notes to cover for weaknesses utilizing water techniques. Then she paused, A finger hesitantly tapped at her writing with red ink. But the third scribe had been really odd. Her mood darkened. His notes are very cynical as he goes on to put down most of the techniques listed. Something hardened flashed in her eyes. But he does something important. He references other techniques that he felt would have been more effective. Thanks to him, I've located the replacement techniques for the areas in the scroll that's too damaged. A small smile had spread on her face. It didn't last long. But here's the thing, she pointed to a few notes that curved along a hole in the scroll. Most of his notes avoid a lot of the damage the scroll took. This person must have gotten hold of it after the Ninetales had destroyed the village. There had been a silence between the two, each pondering on their own thoughts. Naruto had known all of that prior but willingly didn't speak. Still, he surmised that the Hyuga must have had an elaborate information network for Hinata to be able to find this much in the course of one night, a task he had completed after years in trying to remain inconspicuous. Hinata herself had watched Naruto from the corner of her eyes. She could see he was impressed at her feat. But she wanted something ready today, so she moved on to her finishing touch. Hinata straightened and reached into her pack, retrieving a newer scroll. Unfolding it, Naruto recognized the handwriting as Hinata's own recordings, likely based on the scroll he had granted her. Here are some of the references I looked up and some notes I had made on the technique, she said with no small amount of pride. Naruto took it gingerly and scanned it. His eyes widened. She had already integrated it as much as she could with some Hyuga techniques. Apparently she was just full of surprises today. Seeing Naruto visibly floored by her research, Hinata smiled shyly. She had worked extensively through the whole of yesterday, and most of last night to put all of this together just for this meeting today. You want to try it out then? He asked her, a smile playing on his eyes. Yes. Hinata hastily agreed. Then realizing that she sounded too enthusiastic, she heavily blushed and added, if you'd like. Naruto grinned. Hey, I think I can see your hand glowing a bit. Is that your fighting style? Yes. Yes, it is. Is your arm okay? Yeah. Just a little numb, I guess. Hee hee. Oh. I'm very sorry. Don't be. Hey. Here, try kicking your leg higher like this. Okay. See? Oh, I see. You did an academy counter, right? Yep. See, now your countered mine. Hee hee. You should smile more often. Oh. Hey. Wait, doesn't the red ink guy say that there was a better way to do that move? Well, yes, but if I do it like this, I think I'll be able to move forwards or back. See? It'll fit better with the gentle fist. Ah. Okay. That's cool. 1. The sun had long since departed and Sakura had started preparing for bed. Being totally bushed at trying to get her failed technique to work, she had gave up to try again in the morning. Just as she lay her head down on the pillow, she felt her head impact on something hard. Huh! Recognizing the flat surface to be underneath the pillow, she lifted it up to find a neatly wrapped present. What the? Turning the lights back on, she carefully looked it over. Expensive white wrapping paper with a pink silk bow. No card? An admirer, maybe? It tugged at a muscle on Sakura's face, causing an amused smile. Carefully removing the bow and opening the present the way it was wrapped, she had removed the contents and got ready for the surprise. And what a surprise it was! Come Paradise, Volume 1. Her first intent had been to fling the damnable book into the furthest, darkest recess of her room. Or out the window. Or into the face of another pervert. Whoever insulted her would have something coming to them, and thus she had managed a list of suspects, which had narrowed down to her silver-haired teacher. Since she caught Naruto reading it earlier today, it goes to say that perhaps that perverted Chunin could be providing smut to all his students. Thus, it came as such a shock when she opened the cover to find a message written on the inside jacket. Approach with a sensible state of mind, Naruto. 5 times building courage, after 4 glasses of water, 3 hours pacing, 2 reassuring parents and a vow of utter chastity, Sakura found herself reading. 2. And despite heated denial, also liking it too, though she did find it weird that a substantial amount of pages were blank. The second day. Sorry I'm late, Naruto. I was up all night. He waved her off. It's Alric. He found himself at the receiving end of a punch sending him to the floor. I likely deserve that. He deadpanned. Of course you do, she shouted. He stood up and brushed himself off when he'd been caught in another hit that he could have avoided, but didn't. Can I get up now, or are you going to hit me again? He asked politely. One more time, came back the shrill cry. He sighed and proceeded to stand, only to be knocked down again. I assume you read the book then? Naruto cut to the chase. Hell no! He stared levelly at her from his fallen vantage point. She tried to return the stare but had failed when her blush became more and more evident. Well, a little, she admitted. How'd you find it? The question was asked casually. It's pretty well written, I suppose. Sakura could not stop blushing. How far along are you? Another casual question. Halfway, I think. The wall looks mighty interesting. I've gotten only a third through myself. A casual admittance. Silence, though it was awkward to Sakura. Very awkward. Want to train now? He offered. Yeah, sure. Sakura let all the pent-up energy flow out of her, as well as the embarrassment. Might as well put the time to good use. It would be later that she spots a new mirror in his bathroom. 3. But didn't question it. It was a handful of hours later that both the Haruno girl and the Uzumaki boy had found themselves seated at their regular training spot, both content on leaning on a nearby tree for shade. The sun was in full swing today, and the Ninja Council had issued a low-level ban on all fire techniques today, being as hot as it was. Can you believe Kakashi's still gonna be there for another day or two? Naruto was the first to break the silence, sweat glistening his brow. I can believe Kurenai-sensei would overdo it. Sakura nodded, wiping at her face with a handkerchief. Seriously, Kakashi really went too far, though the lesson had been aptly learned. Can you believe it's too hot to train for long? Naruto had shook his head after emptying some of his water canteen into his hair. I can believe that it can get this hot once in a while. Sakura had actually leaned in when the boy shook his head, as to catch the cold droplets on her face. Brief silence. Can you believe that Kanto and Keiko are twins? Naruto tapped at his pouch, which had a novel-shaped bulge. I believed you'd never ask. Sakura also reached for her pouch. Then both of them were caught up in reading. Though it was only a scant peaceful moment later, that Naruto followed up on their conversation. Can you believe that Sasuke turned you down again? He strained to keep a straight face. I believe you can go, Fu. The day had gone and passed, night had slowly descended, bringing about a welcomed cool change to the much-heated atmosphere. This night, Hinata had been pleased with herself. With her quick afternoon sparring session with Naruto, it was rather too heated to go too long. She developed more and more of the gentle fist in combination with flowing water for her style. She reasoned that in the course of time, she can prove herself to everyone, especially to her father. This night, Naruto couldn't stop himself from grinning fiercely. In today's session, he'd subtly gotten Hinata into explaining oh so much on how she used the gentle fist style that he was getting a good idea how to use it. A few more sparring and he'd have enough information to try the chakra scalpel. Then of course there was Sakura. Come tomorrow, she would be able to use the technique he was teaching her, and he would show her its true capabilities. This night, Sakura had been a little confused. She had finished the volume and had to admit that it was pretty good though pretty short. However, when she went back to reread her personally more memorable parts, she found that there were more pages of text than she remembered. Starting from the beginning again, she quickly skimmed parts until she reached something unfamiliar before she started reading in zest. The third day. Sorry I'm late, Naruto. I was up all night. He waved her off. It's Alric. He found himself at the receiving end of a punch sending him to the floor. This time, he didn't try to get up. I hope this doesn't become a routine, he droned. She held up a particular book, her face turning different summer hues. Ah. His recognition was akin to the boy who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Ah, Dash? Is that all you can say, Dash? Her face had long since passed the shade her hair was and now settled on a deep crimson. Well, you can't say the book was bad the second time around, can you? He attempted to shrug whilst still lying down. Red in the face, shaking and indignant, Sakura had wanted to unleash a wrath never seen before on her perverted mentor. However, she had to sheepishly admit the book was better with the gratuitous content. She huffed and looked away, embarrassed with the admission, even if it was just to herself. Naruto only dared righted his posture to a seated position. Well, back to training, he ordered. What? Sakura could only watch him with an astounded expression. Here he was turning her into a pervert, and he had the gall to just motioned her with his hand. Try the technique again. How can you just? Apprentice. She scowled but knew his tone meant business, so she went into the correct stance and pushed chakra into the right places. And she gaped. 4. Well, that wasn't so hard, was it? Wow. Sakura inhaled with more than a little difficulty. Just moments prior, she and Naruto had sparred and the fox boy had been insistent on showing how to apply some of his known techniques to which he would eventually teach her. He approached her seated posture and held his hand out. She accepted and she was pulled to her feet. Okay, what now? She asked. Sasuke, of course, he said. I promised you a way to get you closer to him, didn't I? Sakura had wanted to slap her forehead. She had anticipated this event for so long, but it somehow had slipped her mind. Slipped her mind? She couldn't ponder on that as Naruto continued. At 2 o'clock, he'll be leaving his house and heading for that Uchiha Lake, you know where that is, right? She rolled her eyes. Of course she knew. Just about any of Sasuke's stalkers knew. He'll be practicing his grand fireball technique. Yeah, so? Get him to teach you. Easy. That was the most stupidest plan she'd heard. Sasuke wouldn't teach his fire techniques to anyone, let alone his fan club. That's the most stupidest plan I've heard. Sasuke wouldn't teach his clan's techniques to anyone, let alone to any girl who she paused to choose how to finish the sentence since fans were just a more nice way of saying stalker, which she wasn't. Who has a passing interest in him? No. You're thinking about going about it wrong. Naruto shook his head. And here I thought you were smart. She grimaced and began movements to giving him a head slap. So you don't want to hear it then? He baited. Her dormant arm had caught her attacking arm in mid-swing. The want for retribution clashed with the need for information, but defense was the winner in this showdown today. Just say it already. She spat, having pulled away her aggressive movement. You have to insult him first, he said exasperatedly. Watch him do it a couple of times and then walk up to him. Tell him that was pretty decent, but you bet that you could do it better. That ought to be it. Rinse and repeat each day for different techniques. Naruto placed his hands in his pockets. That's all there is to it. In retrospect, it was a good plan. A very good plan. Then she checked her watch. 10 minutes until 2 o'clock. Shit! It's not enough time to get ready. I've got to wash up and get changed, and she was just about hysterical. No. You don't. He interrupted. What, Dash? You're crazy. I can't go see Sasuke looking like this. It looks like I've just been through a war zone. You can and you will. It will give him incentive to teach you. She couldn't argue that logic, but a hand went up to fix her hair only to find another hand stopping the action. She irritably glanced to the teammate halting her hand. Just go, Naruto breathed with no small amount of being tired of the conversation.